What if everything we thought we knew about history was only a fraction of the truth? Beneath the surface of time, there are stories. Stories of people, places, and events that defy logic, elude explanation, and challenge the very nature of reality itself. From vanished civilizations to unsolved disappearances, there are mysteries that refuse to be unraveled, no matter how hard we search. What are we missing? What dark secrets hide just out of sight, waiting to be discovered? So sit back, relax, and join us as we dive into 3 hours of the strangest, most perplexing mysteries in history, and perhaps uncover answers we never expected. In 1852, on the windswept hills of Dorchester, Dorset, a seemingly innocuous discovery would go on to stir deep questions about the past. It was a quiet corner of England, not far from the ancient Roman town of Bermeja, where the land had long borne the imprint of human history, layers upon layers of stories etched in the earth, waiting to be uncovered. But nothing in the history of this region could have prepared its inhabitants for what lay buried beneath their feet. The object was unearthed during routine excavation, likely a day like any other for the workers who had been tasked with digging up the area. What they discovered, however, was anything but ordinary. A large, intricately crafted ceramic pot. It was not the type of artifact one would expect to find in this part of the world, especially in such pristine condition. The pot, which later came to be known as the Dorchester Pot, was adorned with strange symbols, some of which appeared to have no known connection to any established civilization. The craftsmanship was too advanced for a simple vessel, suggesting a deeper, perhaps even more mysterious, purpose. The pot itself was unlike anything recorded in the archaeological records of Roman Britain, or for that matter, anywhere in the broader Roman Empire. Its features were distinctive, offering a stark contrast to the common pottery of the time, which was typically crude and functional. This pot, by all accounts, looked as though it belonged to a civilization far older, or far different, than what was known to have existed in the region. In the years that followed, experts would debate the origin of the vessel. Could it have been a lost artifact from a long-lost people? Was it a relic of some earlier civilization, perhaps connected to cultures much older than even Rome? The initial excitement over the find was tempered by one key question. How did such an object end up in England? Was this a simple mistake of history, a stray item left behind by traders, or something more enigmatic? Some historians suggested the pot was perhaps the result of ancient trade networks that connected distant corners of the world, perhaps from the Mediterranean or even the Levant, where early civilizations had long flourished. But the pot's strange symbols, featuring geometric patterns and writing that did not seem to match any known language or script, only deepened the mystery. These markings were unlike anything found in Britain or even the broader Roman Empire. As news of the find spread, speculation began to mount. Some believed that the pot was evidence of ancient, lost civilizations that had once inhabited the British Isles before recorded history. The possibility that a culture had existed in Britain prior to the Celts, one with advanced knowledge of art, science, or language, was an intriguing thought. But could it be true? There were whispers of a connection to the mythical Atlantis, as the pot's unusual form seemed to suggest a high degree of sophistication, far beyond what was expected for the time. But no one could say for certain. Some experts argued that the pot's design was simply the product of an ambitious craftsman, perhaps an immigrant from a distant land, creating a work of art with influences drawn from several places, Roman, Celtic, and beyond. Others wondered if the symbols on the pot were part of a lost ancient script waiting to be deciphered. The real question remained: if this was a relic of an ancient culture, where were the other pieces? Despite the excitement surrounding the Dorchester pot, it eventually disappeared from the public eye. After it was displayed briefly at the British Museum, it seemingly vanished, its location unknown for many years. Some claim it was returned to private hands, Others insist it was quietly misplaced in the growing collections of the museum. Whatever its fate, the discovery left a trail of lingering questions that continue to intrigue historians and mystery seekers alike. Could this object truly have belonged to a civilization whose existence had been forgotten by time? Or was it merely an anomaly, an isolated artifact that defied easy classification? Its disappearance only added to the mystery, as though someone, or something, didn't want it to be found. As the years pass and the world turns its focus elsewhere, the Dorchester pot remains a quiet enigma, still waiting to reveal its secrets. Could there be more hidden beneath the earth, lost to history and waiting for the right eyes to uncover them? What might we discover next time in the quiet soil of a forgotten place? As we move from the mysterious hills of Dorchester, another story from the depths of ancient Britain beckons, a tale that, like the Dorchester pot, offers more questions than answers. This time, our journey takes us to Bath, a city known for its Roman baths and its place in history as a cultural and religious center. But hidden beneath the well-worn streets and the echoes of ancient luxury, another mystery lies waiting, one that still raises more questions than it answers. In 1880, workers digging in the vicinity of the Roman baths uncovered something strange, something that would quickly send ripples through the archaeological community. Buried beneath the stones and earth, they unearthed a collection of small, lead tablets. These weren't just any ordinary relics. They were inscribed with Latin, but not in the typical way one might expect from Roman inscriptions. The texts were filled with curses, petitions, and mysterious invocations, all of which seemed to beg the gods for justice, vengeance, and protection from harm. The discovery of these tablets, now known as the Roman Cursed Lead Tablets of Bath, has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and even modern-day occultists. What makes these tablets so compelling, however, is not just the language or the medium of their creation, but their content. Each tablet is a plea, an appeal to the divine for retribution. The messages, scrawled in a mix of formal and colloquial Latin, mostly consist of curses aimed at individuals who had wronged the person placing the curse. The tablets speak of stolen goods, broken promises, and betrayal, but there's something particularly eerie about their tone, a sense of desperation, as if the curses weren't just the idle threats of a scorned individual, but rather a final cry for help from someone who believed that divine intervention was the only way justice could be achieved. The practice of curse tablets, called defixiones in Latin, was not unique to Bath, nor to the Roman world. Throughout antiquity, people from various cultures believed that curses held power, often inscribing them on lead or other materials, burying them in the ground, or even casting them into water to summon the wrath of gods, spirits, or supernatural forces. But the Bath tablets were different. Unlike many other examples, which were often directed at abstract forces or deities, the ones found here were personal, targeting specific individuals by name. They weren't just about invoking general misfortune. They were pleas for vengeance against real people, who may have been part of the local community. What's particularly mysterious is the tone of these curses. The Latin used in the inscriptions isn't formal or grandiose, but rather intimate, as if the person writing these tablets knew the individuals they were cursing on a personal level. One of the tablets, for instance, curses a thief who had stolen a cloak, and the writer seems to be appealing directly to the gods to strike down the thief, urging them to suffer as the thief had caused suffering. Another tablet curses a rival, asking for swift retribution in the form of punishment or divine retribution. The common thread in all these curses is that they seem to express a deep, unyielding belief in the power of the gods to exact justice. A belief that if one couldn't achieve justice through earthly means, one could still rely on divine power to make things right. But why lead? And why Bath? Lead was a common material used for curse tablets because it was believed to be a soft, malleable substance that could contain the power of the curse, trapping the malicious spirit or energy within. Some scholars suggest that lead may have been chosen for its association with the underworld, given its dull, opaque nature. Others speculate that the act of inscribing the curse into lead was seen as a way to bind the spell, ensuring that it would take root and endure, much like the tombs of the dead or the sealed gates of the afterlife. The choice of Bath is also noteworthy. In the Roman era, Bath was not just a place of luxury, it was a religious center. The Romans built temples and bathhouses here in honor of Sulis Minerva, a goddess associated with healing and prophecy. Bath was a place of ritual, where people came to seek cures for ailments, both physical and spiritual. But what if Bath wasn't just a center for healing? What if it was also a place where people sought vengeance, justice, or some other form of retribution? Could these curse tablets be evidence of a darker, more desperate side of the ancient world? Were these people so steeped in their belief in the power of divine retribution that they felt compelled to take matters into their own hands, even if it meant invoking powers they could not control? The mystery deepens when one considers the fate of the tablets. Were they just the result of personal grievances, the product of an ancient society where people felt powerless to seek justice through legal means? Or do they point to something more profound, an unsettling belief in supernatural forces that governed their daily lives in ways we can hardly understand? The tablets were buried, perhaps as an offering, or maybe just discarded. But whatever their intended purpose, they were buried alongside centuries of history, waiting to be uncovered by modern-day hands. The mystery, however, doesn't stop there. Some researchers have suggested that these curse tablets may have been more than just acts of personal vengeance. They might have been part of an even larger, more systematic effort to harness the supernatural. Were these curses a form of ritual magic, a part of a belief system that intertwined personal desires with the greater forces of the universe? And why was Bath, a place of divine healing, also a location for this darker form of spiritual intervention? The fate of the tablets today remains unknown. Some are housed in museums, and a few are on public display. But their true significance, if they hold any at all, remains a matter of debate. Were they merely a reflection of human nature's desire for justice, or did they point to an ancient understanding of power and spirituality that we've long since lost? As we delve further into the unexplained, the Roman cursed lead tablets of Bath continue to stand as a silent testament to the mysterious, often overlooked rituals of the ancient world. What were these people truly seeking when they invoked the power of the gods against their enemies? And what other forgotten corners of the ancient world still hold secrets, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered? The questions remain, and perhaps, like the lead tablets themselves, the answers are buried deeper than we can yet imagine. As we move from the mysterious curse tablets of Bath, we find ourselves drawn across time and oceans to an island nation where the boundaries of the known world began to blur in a truly baffling encounter. Japan, in 1803, was a land in the midst of isolation, cut off from much of the outside world under the Tokugawa shogunate's Sakoku policy. And yet, in a quiet coastal village in the Ibaraki prefecture, an event occurred that would defy explanation, raising questions that still echo today. This is the story of the Utsuro-bune incident, an incident that has lingered in the shadows of Japanese folklore and history. On a cold February morning, a strange vessel was reported to have washed ashore. Its description was unlike anything the people of the time had ever seen. A hollow ship, round in shape, almost like a giant, inverted bowl. Its exterior was smooth and metal, glistening under the pale sun, and its surface was adorned with intricate carvings, symbols no one recognized. The vessel was unlike the wooden ships commonly used by the Japanese at the time, and even more puzzling, there were no obvious sails or oars to suggest how it had arrived. The locals, who had never seen a ship like this, quickly drew a crowd. This was no ordinary sea vessel, but the most astonishing part of the discovery was not the ship itself. It was what, or rather who, was found aboard it. Inside the vessel was a young woman, described as both beautiful and otherworldly. Her appearance stunned those who laid eyes on her. With pale skin, long flowing hair, and eyes that appeared both distant and unearthly, she seemed entirely out of place. She wore clothing that was unfamiliar, fine, silken garments that seemed unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. Her demeanor was equally peculiar. Though she appeared to be human, she could not speak their language. Instead, she only spoke in a language that no one could understand. Her speech was melodic, but strange, like the sound of an unfamiliar tongue, one that offered no clear meaning to those who heard it. The villagers, unsure of what to make of this mysterious woman and her vessel, took her in for a brief period. After all, what else could they do? She had arrived from the sea, and the ship from which she had come seemed to offer no answers. What was she doing here? How had she arrived? Where had she come from? The woman, over time, would communicate through gestures and expressions, but the mystery surrounding her did not dissipate. In fact, it only deepened. After a few days, she was said to have vanished as mysteriously as she had arrived, disappearing without a trace. The ship, too, was soon lost to the sea, vanishing without leaving a single sign of its existence. No one knows what happened to her after that, nor what the true nature of the Utsuro-bune, the hollow ship, was. The tale of the Utsuro-bune is so strange, so otherworldly, that it almost seems like the stuff of myth or legend. Yet, this story was documented in great detail in the writings of the time. A record of the incident was made by a scholar named Kaidan, who transcribed the accounts of several witnesses. According to the surviving records, the woman's eyes were said to be piercing and full of wisdom. Her beauty was described in a way that made her seem more like a figure from a dream than a real person. And although the people of the time couldn't make sense of her, they never forgot her. As bizarre as the Utsuro-bune incident may seem, it is not simply a piece of folklore or an oddity to be dismissed. There are theories, some plausible, others more speculative, that attempt to explain the event. One of the most widely accepted explanations is that the woman was simply a foreigner, possibly a shipwrecked sailor or a castaway from the West who had been stranded on Japan's shores. Some have suggested that the metallic ship was, in fact, a Western vessel that had been rendered unrecognizable by the time it washed up on the shore, an early encounter between Japan and the outside world. Another theory posits that the woman was not of this world at all. The idea that the Utsuro-bune may have been a kind of extraterrestrial craft, and that the woman herself was some kind of alien visitor, has gained some traction among those drawn to the more fantastical explanations of history's unexplained events. The ship's peculiar hollow shape, the woman's strange appearance, and the unrecognizable language have led some to wonder whether this was an encounter with something far beyond human comprehension. Could the vessel have been a spacecraft, or even a time-traveling vessel, that had somehow found its way to Japan in 1803? As with many historical mysteries, there is the possibility that the Utsuro-bune incident may simply be a case of misidentification or misunderstanding. Could it be that the locals, seeing a strange foreign woman in an unfamiliar ship, began to embellish her story over time? After all, the Utsuro-bune was found in a period of great isolation for Japan, an era when the country had minimal contact with the outside world. What the villagers saw could have been interpreted through the lens of the unknown, sparking a story of divine or mystical origin. What remains clear, however, is the enduring enigma of this incident. The Utsuro-bune is a mystery that resists easy answers. The account of the strange ship and its otherworldly passenger raises more questions than it resolves. Was the ship simply a foreign vessel from a far-off land, or was it something entirely more mysterious? Was the woman a lost traveler, or was she, as some have suggested, a visitor from another world entirely? The Utsuro-bune incident stands as one of Japan's most curious mysteries, a story that seems to transcend both time and space, lingering in the annals of history like a whispered riddle. The unanswered questions about the ship, the woman, and her disappearance still hang in the air, waiting for an answer that may never come. And perhaps, just as with the ship that vanished into the waves, the answers to this mystery remain hidden, carried away by time and the tides, forever out of reach. As we leave behind the eerie mystery of the Utsuro-bune and its otherworldly visitor, we find ourselves transported to the warm, humid nights of the Gulf Coast, specifically the small, sleepy town of Pascagoula, Mississippi, in 1942. It's a place where the nights are quiet, the air thick with the scent of salt water and magnolia, and where life, for the most part, moves at a gentle, unhurried pace. But in the summer of that year, something strange began to stir in the shadows of this otherwise peaceful town, a mystery that would come to be known as the Phantom Barber of Pascagoula. It started with a series of unsettling occurrences that seemed at first to be little more than the ramblings of an overactive imagination. The residents of Pascagoula, particularly the women, began to notice something odd. They would wake up in the morning to find their hair had been cut, sometimes in odd patterns, other times in neat, deliberate snips. The strange part was that no one could remember hearing anything unusual during the night, and no one seemed to know who was responsible. The intruder, if there was one, left no trace of their presence. No sign of forced entry, no physical evidence, nothing that could point to a culprit. But as the weeks wore on, the mysterious barber became bolder. On the night of July 9th, 1942, the true horror of the situation was realized. Mrs. Hilda Blaylock, a local woman, reported that she woke up to find her hair had been cut while she slept. The snipping was so precise, so close to her scalp, that it was impossible to deny the intent. She wasn't the only one. Other women in the neighborhood began to report similar experiences. Some had small patches of hair cut away, others found locks of their hair neatly placed on their pillows. The community began to grow fearful. Who was doing this? And more disturbingly, why? Was this simply a prank? Someone seeking to cause a stir? Or was there something darker at play? The town's initial reaction was one of disbelief. People had heard rumors of the mysterious barber, but surely it had to be some kind of joke. The kind of practical joke that seemed innocuous, until it wasn't. The haircuts weren't just strange, they were unsettling. Who could sneak into someone's home, cut their hair, and leave without anyone noticing? The answers didn't come easily, and as the number of victims grew, so did the fear. The first serious attempt to investigate the matter was launched by local authorities. They canvassed the area, spoke with the affected women, and questioned neighbors. But every lead seemed to end in a dead end. No footprints were found outside the homes of the victims. No strange sounds were heard during the night. The Phantom Barber, as he was soon called, seemed to slip through the cracks of the investigation, evading detection as easily as the wind slipping through the trees. But what was the motive? What kind of person would break into someone's house at night to cut their hair? Was it some sort of deranged obsession? A bizarre form of personal expression? And why were women specifically targeted? Some speculated that the perpetrator was simply interested in the act of cutting hair, while others suggested a more sinister reasoning, that the barber was sending a message, but one that was still unclear. Could it be an act of jealousy? Was someone trying to send a warning? As the mystery deepened, theories began to emerge. Some suggested that the incidents were a form of mental illness, a compulsion perhaps, that drove someone to seek out the intimacy of cutting hair while victims slept. Others pointed to more supernatural explanations, considering the odd way the barber seemed to vanish after each incident. Was it a ghost, a phantom, or perhaps something more sinister lurking in the shadows? One of the more chilling aspects of the case was the fact that the barber never attempted to rob the victims. Nothing was stolen, no valuables were taken, only the hair. It didn't seem to fit with a typical burglary or home invasion. Some speculated that the barber's sole aim was to disfigure rather than to steal, perhaps a strange form of retribution, or perhaps an act of power, exerting control over the victims in a way that defied reason. The town's fear began to turn into paranoia. As the incidents continued, many locals began to believe that they were being watched, that the barber was somehow always there, waiting for the right moment to strike. There was a sense of vulnerability, as if no home was truly safe. And just when the situation seemed to reach its peak, it all stopped, abruptly, without warning. The barber, as mysteriously as he had arrived, disappeared. No more hair was cut. No more victims came forward. In time, the case faded into the background, an unresolved mystery that left behind only unanswered questions. Theories about the phantom barber of Pascagoula continue to surface, but the truth remains elusive. Some believe that the perpetrator was a local man with a strange obsession, while others suggest that the entire event was an elaborate hoax, a town gripped by collective hysteria, where rumors and fear spiraled out of control. Still, some believe that the barber may have been someone from outside the town, possibly a transient who disappeared into the night once the frenzy had subsided. The lack of physical evidence and the peculiar nature of the acts continue to fuel speculation. What's most unsettling about the phantom barber of Pascagoula is how ordinary the town seemed, how peaceful before the mystery erupted. This wasn't a tale of violent crime, but of something far subtler, a violation of privacy, an invasion of personal space, and an act of disquieting intimacy carried out under the cover of night. It's a mystery that leaves us wondering, was the barber's purpose ever fully understood? Was he driven by a twisted need for control, or was there something more lurking behind the snipping of those scissors? In the quiet corners of Pascagoula, these questions remain unanswered, and perhaps some things are better left unexplored. As time has passed, the story of the phantom barber has faded from the town's immediate memory, but the questions it raises still linger. Could the answer lie buried somewhere, waiting to be unearthed? Or was it simply the product of a restless mind, one that vanished with the summer winds? As we leave behind the strange and unsettling tale of the phantom barber of Pascagoula, we turn our attention once more to a mystery that challenges the very understanding of history itself. A mystery found not in the shadow of a night or in the whispers of a small town, but in the arid, sun-baked landscape of the California desert. This is the story of the Coso artifact, a discovery that has sparked fierce debate among scientists, archaeologists, and theorists alike. An artifact that some say could rewrite the history of human technology. In 1961, a group of geologists were working near Coso Junction, located in the rugged hills of the Mojave Desert, when they made a discovery that would send ripples through the world of archaeology and history. The object they unearthed was unlike anything they expected to find in this desolate region. Hidden among the rocks, partially exposed and weathered by time, was a small object, a cylinder, roughly the size of a large stone or small rock, but with unmistakable features that didn't belong in the natural world. The object, at first glance, looked like a curious fossil, perhaps an odd-shaped piece of rock, but closer inspection revealed that it was far more complex than anyone had imagined. It appeared to be made of an alloy of some kind, a metallic substance not common in the natural environment. What truly baffled the geologists was the intricate design, small, fine gears and components embedded in the artifact, much like the mechanisms one might expect to find inside an intricate machine. But there was a problem. The object was estimated to be around 500,000 years old, and in 1961, conventional archaeology didn't recognize the possibility that such advanced technology could have existed at such an early time in human history. Human civilization, by the standards of mainstream science, had only begun to show signs of advanced technology in the past few thousand years, far too recent to account for the existence of a device like the Coso artifact. The object was carefully examined, and the results were both fascinating and perplexing. Experts were quick to rule out natural formations. The precise mechanical features of the artifact were simply too deliberate to be the result of erosion or geological processes. The material was also unlike any known to exist in the region, further complicating the explanation. For many, this left only one possible explanation. The object was a product of human craftsmanship, but from a time long before any known civilization existed. To many, the implications were staggering. Could this small, mysterious artifact really be evidence of a lost civilization, one far older than anything we know from the historical record? If so, where did it come from, and who created it? How could such an object have been made 500,000 years ago, and why would it be buried in the Mojave Desert, far from any known ancient civilization? As the debate over the Coso artifact grew, various theories began to emerge, each trying to make sense of what had been found. Some scholars and researchers suggested that the artifact was a tool or piece of machinery left behind by an advanced, forgotten civilization, one that predates even the oldest known cultures. Perhaps it was the remnants of a technological society that flourished long before the rise of Egypt, Sumer, or the Indus Valley. This theory posits that advanced technology existed in the distant past, only to be lost to time, buried by the shifting sands of history. But others were less convinced. Some suggested that the artifact wasn't an artifact at all, but merely a natural geological formation that just happened to resemble the shape and design of an ancient tool. Could the apparent gears and mechanical parts simply be a product of natural processes, erosion, perhaps, or the fracturing of rock over thousands of years? Critics pointed to the absence of any further artifacts found in the area to support the theory of a lost advanced civilization, arguing that the discovery of a single mysterious object didn't constitute evidence of an entire technological society. Yet, there was another possibility that some researchers began to consider: the idea of ancient visitors from another time or place. If the artifact wasn't of local origin, could it have come from a distant, advanced civilization, perhaps from beyond Earth? The notion of ancient extraterrestrial visitors leaving behind objects, technology, or even messages in the distant past has long been a subject of speculation and fascination. In this context, the Coso artifact could be seen as evidence of a connection between humanity and an outside influence, one that is lost to history and perhaps buried by time itself. What makes the Coso artifact even more intriguing is that no further evidence has surfaced to support any of these theories. The object, for all its complexity and mystery, remains a solitary enigma. The artifacts surrounding it, tools, weapons, or other remnants, are nowhere to be found. The area where it was discovered has yielded no further clues, no trace of an ancient civilization or advanced culture that might have left it behind. In the decades since the discovery, no follow-up explorations have produced anything that might explain the strange metallic object further. This absence of corroborating evidence only deepens the mystery. Why was the Coso artifact seemingly alone in the desert? And why hasn't it been replicated or found again in the many years since? Could it be that we are simply overlooking something crucial, some key piece of the puzzle that would explain its origins? Or is the object truly a one-of-a-kind artifact, something that was never meant to be found, left behind by a civilization long forgotten, or even from a time that we cannot yet comprehend? The Coso artifact raises far more questions than answers, and as with many mysteries of this nature, the possibility of an explanation grows more elusive with time. Could it be the remnant of an ancient, advanced human civilization that existed long before the history we know? Or is it simply an oddity, a natural object that has been misinterpreted due to its uncanny resemblance to something man-made? As of today, no one can say for certain. The Coso artifact remains a lingering enigma, its true nature still shrouded in mystery. And as the years pass, we are left to wonder, are there more such artifacts hidden beneath the earth, waiting for the right person to uncover them? Or is the Coso artifact itself the only clue we have to a lost, forgotten chapter of human history? Only time, and perhaps further discoveries, will tell. But until then, the mystery remains unsolved, an open question that invites all to ponder its origins and implications. As we leave behind the mystery of the Coso artifact, we turn now to a strange event that unfolded not in the distant past, but in 1994, in a quiet corner of Washington State, USA. A place where the mundane routines of daily life were disrupted by something far more bizarre and unexplained. Oakville, a small town nestled along the Puget Sound, was known for its peaceful atmosphere, surrounded by lush forests, clear waters, and a tight-knit community. But everything changed one summer day when an unusual and unsettling phenomenon began to unfold. It started on August 7th, when residents of Oakville woke to a strange sight. Soft, gelatinous blobs began falling from the sky, thousands of them. The blobs, about the size of a marble or a small pebble, rained down in sheets, covering cars, houses, and streets. They appeared to be a translucent, slimy substance, almost like blobs of clear jelly or, as some witnesses would later describe, like a gooey, gelatinous rain. The gelatinous blobs stuck to everything they touched, leaving behind a strange residue. They didn't just fall on the ground. They coated surfaces in a layer that seemed to have a consistency unlike anything the town had ever encountered. At first, the residents were confused, wondering if it had been some kind of freak weather event, perhaps a type of hailstorm or an unusual rainstorm. But what followed was far more troubling. In the days after the strange precipitation, people began to report symptoms of illness, nausea, headaches, dizziness, and even respiratory problems. Pets, too, began to fall ill, with some dying within hours of contact with the mysterious blobs. The situation escalated as the illness seemed to spread, causing widespread concern. Residents, fearing that they had been exposed to something dangerous, began to ask what this strange substance could be and where it had come from. A local doctor, Dr. Richard O. Beck, became one of the first to take the phenomenon seriously. He noticed that some of his patients were suffering from the same symptoms, and that many of them had been exposed to the blobs in one way or another. He sent samples of the gelatinous material to a laboratory for analysis, hoping to identify its composition. What came back, however, was both strange and inconclusive. The lab reports revealed that the blobs contained a variety of substances, but they couldn't pinpoint exactly what they were. The blobs contained a mixture of human white blood cells, which was a perplexing discovery. How could this substance, falling from the sky, contain biological components that are normally found only within the human body? This finding only deepened the mystery, leading to a growing sense of unease in Oakville. If the blobs weren't of earthly origin, then where had they come from? And why did they contain human blood cells? Some suggested that the blobs might have been connected to a military experiment gone wrong, perhaps a type of biological agent released by accident, or even a covert government project that had gone awry. This theory was fueled by the fact that the United States Air Force and other government entities often conduct secretive experiments, some of which involve the release of unusual substances into the atmosphere. Could the Oakville blobs have been part of such an experiment? Was this an isolated incident, or were there other unexplained phenomena happening in the world, hidden from the public eye? Yet, despite the lab results and the speculations, no conclusive explanation emerged. In fact, the most baffling part of the Oakville blobs phenomenon was that it seemed to vanish as suddenly as it had appeared. After a few days, the blobs stopped falling, and the illnesses began to subside, though the cause of the bizarre event was never truly understood. The town of Oakville returned to its quiet, everyday life, but the mystery lingered. What had happened in those days of gelatinous rain? Was it a freak weather event? A military experiment? Or was there something more to the phenomenon? Something beyond the scope of human understanding? The Oakville blobs phenomenon has remained one of the most baffling unexplained events of the 20th century. Several theories have been proposed to account for the strange rain. Some scientists believe that the blobs could have been caused by a type of marine bioluminescent organism, perhaps a plankton species that had been caught in a storm and released into the atmosphere. The theory suggests that the organisms, upon being swept into the air, could have fallen in a gelatinous form when they reached the ground. But even this explanation leaves many questions unanswered. How could marine life produce such a large quantity of material, and why did it contain human blood cells? Another theory posits that the blobs could have been a type of ball lightning, a rare and poorly understood atmospheric phenomenon where electrical discharges form into balls of light that can float through the air, sometimes leaving behind a gelatinous residue. However, this theory doesn't fully explain the biological components in the blobs or the widespread health effects that followed. Moreover, there have been no other documented instances of such a phenomenon occurring in the same way as the Oakville blobs. Some have even suggested that the blobs could have been the result of a meteorological event known as biological rain, where substances like bacteria or algae are picked up into the atmosphere and later fall back to Earth in the form of rain. While biological rain has been documented before, mostly involving bacteria or fungi, no such event has ever involved the kind of substance that Oakville experienced. And then, of course, there is the theory that the Oakville blobs were something far stranger, a kind of extraterrestrial phenomenon. Some believe the blobs might have been the result of some form of biological material being released by a UFO or some other unknown entity. Could Oakville have been the site of an encounter with something beyond our world? It's a theory that remains as speculative as it is mysterious, but it continues to captivate those who are drawn to the unknown. Whatever the cause, the Oakville blobs phenomenon remains unresolved. No single explanation has been able to fully account for the gelatinous material, its biological content, or the illness it caused. The event is one that continues to spark debate among scientists, conspiracy theorists, and the general public alike. It is a case that remains open, an anomaly in the fabric of everyday life, an unanswered question that seems to defy reason. In Oakville, the mystery has faded with time, but the question remains. What exactly were the blobs that fell from the sky, and why did they happen? Was it a natural phenomenon, the result of a scientific experiment, or something even more unexplainable? Whatever the answer, the Oakville blobs will continue to hover in the realm of the unexplained, leaving us to wonder what else, hidden in plain sight, still waits to be discovered. As we move from the strange and unsettling phenomenon of the Oakville blobs, we now turn our attention to something altogether different, but just as puzzling. This time, the mystery takes us to the streets of some of America's most bustling cities, where an unknown figure, or group, left cryptic messages embedded in the very pavement beneath our feet. For decades, these messages, etched into the streets, have remained an enigma. These are the Toynbee tiles, a series of mysterious inscriptions that have appeared in cities across the United States, and even beyond, with a message that no one can quite decipher. At first glance, the tiles may seem like little more than graffiti, small square slabs of linoleum or asphalt placed into the pavement at seemingly random locations. But the messages they bear are anything but random. Each tile features a strange, cryptic statement. Toynbee idea in movie, 2001, resurrect dead on planet Jupiter. This message, as simple as it may appear, is shrouded in layers of mystery. What is the Toynbee idea? Why does it reference the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey? And why, of all places, would someone choose to inscribe such an odd message into the streets of cities from Philadelphia to Sao Paulo, leaving no trace of who they were or why they did it? The first known Toynbee tile was discovered in 1983 in Philadelphia, and over the years, others were found in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., and even South America. The tiles are often embedded in busy urban areas, sidewalks, street corners, and intersections where people walk every day, yet most people remain oblivious to their existence. At first, the phenomenon seemed like little more than the eccentric ramblings of an individual or group, perhaps a prankster with too much time on their hands, or a lone artist making a statement. But as more tiles appeared, the mystery deepened, and the implications became more profound. What made the Toynbee tiles so intriguing was not just their unusual message, but the fact that they seemed to suggest something far beyond a simple act of vandalism or a random piece of art. The reference to 2001, A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick's iconic science fiction film, brought a new layer of complexity to the message. What connection did this film, a meditation on humanity's evolution and our place in the universe, have to the idea being promoted by the tiles? What did resurrect dead on planet Jupiter mean, and why was Jupiter, the gas giant, far from Earth, chosen as the place for resurrection? Theories began to swirl as people tried to make sense of the message. Some speculated that the Toynbee idea referenced a theory of human revival, possibly tied to the idea of cryonics or reanimation after death. In this reading, the tiles seemed to be advocating for a form of resurrection, not on Earth, but on Jupiter. Could it be an allusion to the idea of humans, in the distant future, somehow reaching a new stage of existence by colonizing the planets, or by resurrecting those long deceased? Yet, others looked at the message through a different lens. The reference to the film 2001, A Space Odyssey, prompted speculation that the tiles were linked to some kind of cult, or at least a group with esoteric beliefs about the future of humanity and its destiny in space. The film itself, based on Arthur C. Clarke's novel, explored themes of artificial intelligence, evolution, and humanity's encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence. Was the Toynbee idea a form of message or warning, left by someone who believed that humanity's future lay not on Earth, but among the stars? Could the tiles be connected to an obscure belief system, or perhaps even an underground movement seeking to promote their vision of the future? Adding to the enigma is the question of the tiles' creators. Who would go to the trouble of creating these small, cryptic messages and embedding them in the streets, and why? The tiles themselves were often made from linoleum or asphalt, materials that could easily be found in everyday life, but which would have taken considerable effort to inscribe and place in the ground. The time and resources needed to create and distribute these tiles seemed disproportionate to the simple message they conveyed. Some have speculated that the creators could have been a rogue group with an intense, almost religious belief in the message they were spreading. Others have suggested that the person or people behind the tiles were simply obsessed with Kubrick's film and its themes, and were using the tiles as a form of personal expression. Over the years, a number of theories have emerged to try to make sense of the Toynbee tiles, but none have been definitive. Some believe that the tiles were the work of a single individual, possibly a man named James Marasco, a man who was linked to the creation of many of the tiles and who allegedly had a deep fascination with the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. However, there has been little concrete evidence to connect him directly to the tiles, and the true identity of the creator remains elusive. What is clear, however, is that the tiles were not the work of a simple prankster. Their placement, their consistency, and their mysterious nature suggest that the person or group behind them had a deep sense of purpose, one that remains hidden from the public. Some researchers have even suggested that the tiles were part of a form of artistic protest, a statement made against the modern world, against society's disconnection from deeper, more spiritual ideas. Perhaps the Toynbee idea was meant to challenge the way people thought about life, death, and the future of humanity. Others have theorized that the tiles were part of a broader social experiment, a way to see how people would react to such cryptic messages embedded in their daily environment. Were the creators testing the public's ability to decode meaning from what was essentially an enigma? But while these theories offer potential explanations, none of them definitively solve the mystery. The message of the Toynbee tiles, Toynbee idea in movie. 2001: Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter remains as puzzling as ever. What does it truly mean? Is it a cryptic message left behind by a visionary who sought to change humanity's path? Or was it the work of someone simply obsessed with science fiction and the possibilities of space? Could the tiles be connected to a larger, forgotten movement, one that sought to influence public thought on life, death, and the future of human evolution? Or is there a much simpler explanation, one rooted in the mind of a lone individual whose reasons for creating these tiles may never be fully understood? For decades, the Toynbee tiles have left us with more questions than answers. No single theory can fully explain their origin or their meaning, and the identity of the person, or people, behind them remains an enigma. The tiles are a reminder that, even in the modern world, there are mysteries that continue to defy explanation, that continue to linger in the cracks of our daily lives, waiting to be uncovered. Perhaps the Toynbee tiles are a puzzle we are not meant to solve, or perhaps they are a message left for a future generation, one that will finally be able to understand what they mean. Whatever the case, the mystery persists, leaving us to wonder, who left these messages, and what exactly did they want us to know? As we leave behind the cryptic messages of the Toynbee tiles, we now journey to a land of ancient mysteries, Egypt. Known for its monumental tombs, vast pyramids, and unparalleled history, Egypt has long captivated the world with its secrets. But in the shadow of the Giza Plateau, where the Great Pyramids stand watch over the desert sands, there is a lesser-known enigma, the tomb of the unknown animal of Saqqara. Saqqara, an ancient burial ground located just south of Cairo, is home to the famed Step Pyramid of Djoser, one of Egypt's earliest and most significant architectural feats. But while Saqqara is often associated with the grand tombs of Egypt's pharaohs, it is the discovery of an unassuming tomb, without any royal inscription or grandeur, that has sparked intrigue. This tomb, unearthed in the early 2000s, was not the tomb of a king or even a noble. It contained something altogether different, a creature whose identity has left archaeologists scratching their heads. The tomb itself is modest by Egyptian standards. It sits among the many other burial chambers at Saqqara, most of which are marked by elaborate inscriptions, frescoes, and statues of animals that were revered by the ancient Egyptians. However, the tomb in question contained an object that defied the typical expectations of ancient Egyptian burial practices. Inside the tomb, buried beneath layers of stone and sand, were the remains of what appeared to be a large, unknown animal. This discovery, at first glance, might not seem extraordinary, After all, Egypt is home to a vast array of animal mummies, cats, crocodiles, ibises, and other creatures that were revered in the afterlife. Animals were often mummified in Egypt to accompany their human counterparts, either as offerings or as companions for the journey into the afterlife. But what made this discovery truly perplexing was that the creature's identity did not fit into any known category. It was not an animal native to Egypt, nor did it resemble any species that had been recorded by historians or zoologists. The remains were not those of a common domestic animal, such as a cat or dog, nor were they the remains of any of the sacred creatures commonly associated with Egyptian religion, like the jackal-headed Anubis or the cat goddess Bastet. Instead, what lay in the tomb appeared to be something completely unfamiliar. The creature's size, skeletal structure, and features defied classification. It had an unusually long snout, a body shape that was neither fully reptilian nor mammalian, and limbs that suggested a form of movement unlike any known animal from the ancient world. Intriguingly, the creature had been mummified in the same meticulous manner as the finest of Egyptian royal mummies. Its body had been preserved with a level of care that spoke to its importance, but there were no inscriptions on the tomb to explain its significance. The lack of any name or title left archaeologists to wonder, who was this creature for? Was it an animal tied to the royal court, an offering to the gods, or perhaps something even more mysterious? The absence of any clear identification has led to a host of theories, each more speculative than the last. One theory suggests that the animal could have been a creature from distant lands, perhaps a rare animal brought to Egypt from a far-off region, or even an animal from the fabled lands of Punt, an ancient kingdom that Egypt traded with extensively. The strange creature might have been considered so unusual, so exotic, that it was deemed worthy of a tomb built in its honor. Another theory posits that the animal could have been a symbolic figure representing a god or mythological creature rather than a real, living animal. The Egyptians were known for their reverence of divine beings in animal form, and this creature's odd features might have been meant to represent something supernatural or otherworldly, perhaps even an entity from Egyptian myth that is no longer remembered. Could it have been a creature tied to a long-forgotten deity, one whose worship had faded from the historical record? Others have speculated that the creature may have been the result of genetic experimentation or hybridization, a theory that borders on the fringe, but which has gained traction among certain circles. Could this have been an ancient attempt at creating a new species, a hybrid animal, possibly even with human-like qualities? While there is no concrete evidence to support this theory, the strange features of the creature have led some to entertain the possibility that ancient Egyptian priests may have experimented with animals in ways that are beyond our current understanding. The most perplexing aspect of the tomb, however, is the utter lack of any context. Unlike most tombs in Saqqara, which are adorned with hieroglyphs or elaborate funerary texts, the tomb of the unknown animal is strangely silent. The absence of written records leaves us with little to work with, forcing archaeologists to rely solely on the physical remains and the cryptic nature of the burial itself. Why would an animal, possibly an extremely rare and significant one, be buried without a single inscription to explain its purpose? This silence, this void of explanation, has only deepened the mystery of the tomb. For years, researchers have pored over the tomb's discovery, but the questions remain unresolved. Was this an animal of great importance to the ancient Egyptians? Or was it an obscure figure, lost to time, whose significance has been erased from history? Perhaps this tomb, with its strange occupant, is a relic of a forgotten age, one whose story will never be fully known. As with many ancient mysteries, the lack of definitive answers only adds to the allure of the puzzle. And yet, the tomb of the unknown animal continues to call to those who seek to understand the world of the ancient Egyptians. Could this creature have been a symbol of something far greater? An unknown god, a royal companion, or an alien presence? Or could it be something even more profound? A reminder of the things we have yet to uncover, a piece of history lost to time but preserved in the dry desert sands? The questions surrounding the tomb of the unknown animal are likely to remain unanswered, leaving it as one of the many unsolved mysteries of ancient Egypt. What this creature represents, or why it was mummified and placed in a tomb, remains a puzzle. But perhaps that is part of the allure of ancient mysteries. The more we learn, the more we realize there is still so much left to uncover. As we stand before the tomb, we can only wonder, what if the answers lie buried somewhere beneath the sands of Saqqara, waiting for a future generation to unearth them? And what other secrets, ancient and forgotten, still remain hidden in the vast, eternal desert? As we leave the enigmatic tomb of the unknown animal in Saqqara, we now turn our attention to a mystery that stretches far beyond the boundaries of Egypt, deep into the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Here, the story of Bermeja Island unfolds, a mysterious landmass that has disappeared without a trace, leaving only questions in its wake. Imagine the shimmering surface of the sea, the calm waters of the Gulf stretching endlessly beneath a warm sun. According to old maps, somewhere within these waters, there existed an island, a small, uninhabited speck of land known as Bermeja Island. Its coordinates were known, its presence documented by navigators for centuries. Located roughly 100 miles off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, the island was said to lie within Mexican territorial waters, just on the cusp of a disputed boundary between Mexico and the United States. In the 16th century, it was recorded on Spanish maps, and by the 19th century, Bermeja Island had been confirmed on various charts, described as a small, rocky outcrop, perhaps covered with vegetation, an uninhabited piece of land in a seemingly desolate part of the world. But when modern-day explorers sought to locate Bermeja Island in the late 20th century, they encountered an unsettling discovery. The island simply wasn't there. Despite its prominent placement on historical maps, despite its inclusion in navigational references, the island was nowhere to be found. Survey ships, researchers, and even satellite imagery were all unable to locate any sign of Bermeja Island in the waters where it was supposed to be. The island had vanished, without warning, without explanation, and its disappearance has puzzled geographers, historians, and scientists for decades. The mystery of Bermeja Island is not just a simple case of a missing landmass. It's one that strikes at the heart of cartographic history, geopolitical tensions, and the question of how our understanding of the world can be so thoroughly upended by something as simple as a piece of land that no longer exists. The island's sudden absence has led many to ask, was it ever really there? Or did something more unusual happen, something that has yet to be fully understood? The first question that arises is why Bermeja Island was so important. Its significance was tied to territorial disputes in the Gulf of Mexico. The island, if it existed, lay within a maritime area that was critical for fishing rights, oil exploration, and economic control. Its location had the potential to tip the balance of power in a long-standing dispute between Mexico and the United States over the exact delineation of their respective economic zones in the Gulf. For years, the island was a part of this strategic equation, but now, with its disappearance, the stakes seemed even higher. The official narrative suggests that Bermeja Island might have been the victim of natural erosion or even seismic activity that caused it to sink beneath the waves. Earthquakes, subsidence, and other natural forces are known to reshape the ocean floor, and it is possible, some believe, that Bermeja Island simply succumbed to the forces of nature, vanishing into the depths of the Gulf. However, this theory doesn't fully explain why the island was so well documented for centuries, why it appeared on maps, charts, and records. and yet there is no trace of it left today. Even more perplexing is the fact that despite its disappearance, Bermeja Island's location remains noted in some contemporary records. Old maps, like those of Spanish cartographer Diego de la Cruz in the 1500s, still indicate the island's position in the same coordinates, but modern surveys and satellite images have come up empty. If it had disappeared entirely, why does it persist in these older documents? Is there something more to the story? Something deliberately hidden from view? Over time, alternative theories have begun to take shape, each one as speculative as the last. Some suggest that Bermeja Island's disappearance is part of a larger conspiracy, a deliberate erasure, perhaps, in the context of political maneuvering. The idea that the United States, or even Mexican authorities, might have a vested interest in eliminating the island from the record has been floated by those who suspect that its location would have been of great geopolitical value. In this view, the island was either deliberately removed or its existence covered up to settle maritime disputes without external scrutiny. Others point to the possibility of an ancient civilization, long forgotten, that may have left the island to vanish on its own. Could Bermeja have been known by earlier cultures, perhaps as a sacred or strategic location? There are no records to suggest such a theory, but the allure of hidden civilizations and lost lands is a potent one. Some suggest that the island may have had a significant role in early navigation routes or trade networks, only to be lost to time and nature, swallowed up by the sea and forgotten by modern history. Yet another theory delves into the possibility of the island's existence being a deliberate mistake, a geographical error that somehow became embedded in cartographic records. Some theorists argue that Bermeja was never a real island at all, but a phantom feature, a cartographic mirage that slipped through the cracks of early map-making, only to be perpetuated by a combination of human error and later repetition. In this case, the disappearance of the island is not a disappearance at all, but simply the realization that it was never there to begin with. However, this theory is difficult to reconcile with the extensive historical references to Bermeja. Perhaps the most bizarre theory involves the idea that Bermeja Island is somehow tied to more supernatural explanations. Could the island be a manifestation of a lost civilization's curse, or an anomaly linked to the mystical forces of the sea? Could it have been an island with properties that made it disappear at will, as if it were part of some otherworldly realm that has yet to be fully understood? While this theory leans heavily into the speculative, it is not without intrigue for those who have explored the more mysterious aspects of the world's lost places. No matter the theory, the mystery of Bermeja Island endures. There are still many who search the Gulf waters, hoping to find a trace of the island, some fragment of its existence. But after more than a century of attempts, there has been no success. The island, as far as we know, remains missing. Yet, as the mystery persists, one has to wonder, was Bermeja Island ever real? Or was it a figment of ancient map-makers' imaginations, preserved in the pages of history but never truly part of the physical world? In the end, the question remains as elusive as the island itself. The disappearance of Bermeja Island challenges our understanding of geography and history, forcing us to reconsider the accuracy of the maps we rely on and the certainty with which we regard the world around us. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, hidden beneath the waves, their answers lost to time and tide. But for now, the ghost of Bermeja Island haunts the waters of the Gulf, a question mark on the map of human knowledge. As we shift our focus from the vanishing Bermeja Island to another haunting enigma, we find ourselves in the heart of ancient China, where an even deeper mystery lurks beneath the surface of history. This is the story of the Peking man fossils, an extraordinary discovery that has shaped our understanding of human evolution, yet whose fate remains shrouded in uncertainty. The year was 1929 when a team of paleontologists, led by the Danish archaeologist Johan Gunnar Andersen, uncovered a significant archaeological find in the cave of Zhoukoudian, located just outside Beijing, formerly Peking. The fossilized remains of a human ancestor, which would later be dubbed Peking Man, were carefully extracted from the cave system, and the evidence it offered was profound. The fossils belonged to Homo erectus, an early human species that lived around 750,000 to 400,000 years ago. What made the Peking Man fossils so remarkable was not just the fact that they were some of the most complete and well-preserved specimens of early human ancestors ever found, but also the incredible insight they offered into human evolution. These fossils, comprising skulls, teeth, and bones, painted a picture of a primitive yet sophisticated species that lived in a time far removed from our own. But what truly set these fossils apart was their potential to shed light on a pivotal moment in human history: the transition between apes and humans. As researchers worked to analyze the fossils, it became clear that Peking Man was not just any ancient ancestor. They exhibited evidence of controlled fire use, sophisticated tools, and even social organization, signs of intelligence and adaptability that were believed to be unique to early humans. The discovery added a new layer of depth to our understanding of prehistoric humanity, suggesting that the species had a far more complex relationship with their environment than was previously thought. However, the excitement surrounding this groundbreaking discovery would soon turn to mystery and dread. In 1941, during the Second World War, the fossils, some of the most important human evolutionary remains ever found, vanished without a trace. Amid the Japanese occupation of China, the fossils, along with other valuable archaeological specimens, were being stored at a hospital in Beijing for safekeeping. But one day, the fossils were simply gone. Despite an exhaustive search by local authorities, there was no sign of their disappearance. The Peking Man fossils had vanished from history. For decades, the mystery of their disappearance has haunted both scientists and the public. What happened to the fossils? Were they lost in the chaos of wartime, or did someone intentionally steal them? Could they have been smuggled out of the country, or even destroyed during the conflict? No one knows for sure. What remains is a haunting question. Where did the Peking Man fossils go? There have been several theories put forward to explain the fate of the fossils, but none have been confirmed with any certainty. One of the most widely accepted explanations is that they were lost during the Japanese occupation of China. As the war raged on, many valuable items, both cultural and scientific, were either destroyed or stolen. The fossils, kept in a fragile and unprotected state, could have easily been lost in the upheaval. Some suggest that they were simply misplaced or buried in the chaos of wartime evacuations, only to remain buried beneath layers of time and history. However, another theory is that the fossils were deliberately stolen. During the war, there were a number of shadowy figures and organizations that profited from the looting of cultural and scientific artifacts. Could the fossils have been taken by those seeking to profit from their sale on the black market? In the confusion and fear of wartime China, could these irreplaceable fossils have been smuggled out of the country, perhaps sold to private collectors or research institutions outside China? The thought of the Peking Man fossils being sold or hidden away in secret collections is deeply unsettling, but it remains a possibility that cannot be fully dismissed. A more speculative theory, though far less substantiated, is that the fossils were somehow destroyed. Some have suggested that the fossils might have been destroyed in an air raid or during the chaos of the war, perhaps by accident. This theory is fueled by the idea that the Japanese military, or even local forces, might have mistakenly assumed the fossils were of little value, discarding them in the confusion. Alternatively, it has been suggested that the fossils could have been intentionally destroyed by someone who saw them as a symbol of Chinese cultural heritage, or even as a threat to political ideologies. While there is no direct evidence to support these claims, they add another layer of intrigue to an already mysterious story. Over the years, there have been several efforts to locate the fossils, but to no avail. In the 1950s, after the war ended, a joint expedition between Chinese and Western scientists was launched to search for any trace of the Peking man fossils. Despite combing through records, contacting collectors, and conducting further investigations, no clues surfaced. In the decades since, the search for the fossils has dwindled, as it has become increasingly clear that they are unlikely to ever be recovered. Some have even speculated that the fossils may have been so thoroughly hidden or destroyed that no trace of them will ever be found. The loss of the Peking man fossils remains one of the most significant and unresolved mysteries in the history of paleontology. In the absence of concrete evidence, the mystery has fueled countless theories, from the plausible to the wildly speculative. And yet, despite the passage of time, no one has been able to definitively answer the question, where are the Peking man fossils? Perhaps the most disconcerting aspect of the mystery is the sense that something essential is missing. Not just a physical artifact, but a key to understanding our shared past. The Peking man fossils could have provided us with answers to fundamental questions about human evolution, questions about our origins, our migration patterns, and our relationship to other species. With their disappearance, we are left with a void, an absence that no amount of scientific inquiry has yet been able to fill. The mystery of the Peking man fossils is a story not just of lost artifacts, but of lost knowledge, knowledge that may never be recovered. And as the years pass, the possibility that the fossils may never be found grows more likely. Yet, the questions remain. Were the fossils lost in the chaos of war? Or are they hidden away in secret, lost to the world forever? And what might they have revealed about the distant past, had they not disappeared in such an inexplicable manner? As we reflect on the mystery of the Peking man fossils, we are reminded that some of the most significant answers may always elude us, buried in the dust of history, lost beneath the weight of time. As we leave behind the haunting mystery of the Peking man fossils, we now shift our focus to a case that, while more modern, remains just as perplexing. In the quiet streets of West Germany, 1984, an unsettling event occurred. A series of events, really, that left authorities and the public with more questions than answers. The case is known as the YOGTZE case, a strange and tragic story that continues to defy explanation even after decades of investigation. It all began on a crisp October evening in 1984, when a man named Günther Stoll, a 41-year-old mechanic, found himself at the center of a mystery that would grip the attention of the nation. That night, Günther made a phone call to his mother, something he rarely did. His voice, as she described it, was strained, almost desperate. He told her that he was in grave danger, that something terrible was about to happen to him, and that he was afraid for his life. But what was most chilling about the call was what he said next. He mentioned a cryptic phrase, YOGTZE. He repeated the word several times, though it made no sense to his mother. His utterance was a riddle, a name, a code, but it seemed somehow to signify something important. When she asked him what the word meant, he only responded with vague statements, refusing to elaborate further. He then abruptly ended the call, his tone growing increasingly frantic. After that, he was never heard from again. Just hours later, Günther was found dead, strangled, seemingly by his own belt, in his car. His body was discovered on a desolate stretch of road in a remote area outside of the city of Düsseldorf, a far cry from the place where he'd lived. The position of his body, the lack of any evidence pointing to a clear motive, and the peculiar circumstances surrounding his disappearance left investigators puzzled. The case was unusual from the start, but it was the mysterious word YOGTZE that lingered, like a ghost, over every lead. No one knew what it meant, or why Günther had uttered it in his final moments. Some thought it might have been a code, a cryptic reference to some hidden danger that he had uncovered. Others speculated that it was a personal connection, something that only Günther understood, something only he had known. But in the absence of further clues, YOGTZE became a puzzle that no one could solve. As investigators delved deeper into Günther's life, they discovered that he had been involved in some unusual and potentially dangerous activities. He had been working on a mysterious project involving the testing of new technologies, possibly related to his job as a mechanic. He had been in contact with a number of business associates, some of whom had questionable backgrounds. But there was no clear indication that any of this had anything to do with his death, or with YOGTZE. Despite several investigations, the mystery remained unsolved. In fact, the case seemed to spiral further into confusion. Some of Günther's colleagues reported that he had seemed increasingly paranoid in the days leading up to his death, as though he were being watched or followed. Others recalled that he had mentioned certain people and organizations, though they couldn't recall any specifics. What's even stranger is that some of the people who had been closest to Günther also seemed to have trouble remembering key details about his final days. This only deepened the suspicion that something larger was at play, that perhaps there were forces at work that were beyond human comprehension, or at least beyond the understanding of those who were investigating. What could it all mean? Over time, the case continued to generate strange developments. In a bizarre twist, several people who were associated with Günther, his friends, colleagues, and even distant relatives, began to experience odd phenomena themselves. Some of them reported seeing strange, cryptic symbols that they couldn't identify, appearing in random places, as though someone was trying to send a message. Others heard whispers or received strange phone calls in the dead of night, warning them of a terrible fate. The connection between these occurrences and Günther's death became more apparent, as if some unseen hand was manipulating events from behind the scenes. Despite all these unsettling signs, no one could provide a solid explanation. Was YOGTZE some kind of code, a secret language meant to convey an urgent warning? Or was it simply a meaningless fragment of a man's mind, twisted by stress and fear? Could it have been related to some underground group, perhaps one involved in espionage, conspiracy, or a cult? Theories, as they tend to do in cases like this, proliferated quickly, but none of them seemed to fit perfectly. Adding to the mystery was the complete lack of evidence pointing to any clear suspect or motive. Unlike other cases where the crime scene offers a trail to follow, Günther's death seemed to be deliberately obscured. The absence of concrete evidence left investigators grasping at straws, trying to make sense of a puzzle that stubbornly refused to reveal its solution. Could YOGTZE have been a warning of something far more sinister, perhaps related to a global conspiracy? Or was it a warning that Günther himself had been involved in something he was never supposed to know? As the years passed, the YOGTZE case became one of Germany's most enduring unsolved mysteries. Theories and speculation filled the void left by the lack of answers. Some believed that it was simply the result of a personal dispute gone wrong. Others saw it as a prelude to something far darker. Yet, despite the numerous theories and investigations, the case has remained unresolved. What is YOGTZE? Why did Günther Stoll utter it in his final moments, and why did it haunt the case from that point forward? Was it a clue, a warning, or something else entirely? The unsettling reality is that we may never know. There are still many unanswered questions. Could the cryptic phrase YOGTZE be connected to a hidden network, a secret code used to communicate among a select few? Or was it a random collection of sounds that somehow ended up at the heart of a mystery, like so many other inexplicable elements in our world? Some believe that the case may be linked to a larger conspiracy involving powerful and unseen forces, but for now, those theories remain just that, speculation. The YOGTZE case stands as a chilling reminder of how little we truly understand about the strange forces at play in our world. It challenges our understanding of what's possible, of what can be hidden just beneath the surface. And perhaps, just as with many other unsolved mysteries, it is a story that will continue to intrigue and elude us for years to come. As we reflect on the events that led to Günter Stoll's tragic death, we are left with the unsettling realization that some answers, perhaps, are never meant to be found. What happened to Günter? And what exactly did YOGTZE mean? Only time will tell if the mystery ever comes to light, or if it will remain a haunting riddle forever lost in the shadows. As we leave behind the cryptic YOGTZE case, we now journey to the far eastern reaches of China, where an underground mystery awaits beneath the quiet hills of Zhejiang province. Here, hidden from the prying eyes of the world for centuries, lies a truly enigmatic site, the Longyou Caves. This sprawling network of caves, with their intricate design and massive scale, has long confounded archaeologists, historians, and explorers alike. Unlike any natural formation, the caves seem to carry the weight of a secret, and despite the many years of investigation, the questions surrounding their origin remain as elusive as the caves themselves. The Longyou Caves are located near the town of Longyou, not far from the bustling city of Coso. But as you approach the site, all signs of modernity seem to fall away, replaced by a sense of timelessness and mystery. The caves are carved into the bedrock of the region, stretching across an area of over 30,000 square meters. There are over 30 known caves, although the true extent of the system remains unclear, with more waiting to be uncovered beneath the Earth's surface. What makes the Longyou Caves so remarkable is not simply their size, but their almost unnatural precision. The caves are man-made, or at least appear to be. But who could have constructed such a vast, complex network of tunnels and chambers, and why? Unlike natural caves, which are irregular and shaped by the forces of erosion, the Longyou Caves are symmetrical, their walls smooth and their ceilings arched in a way that suggests a high degree of engineering skill. There are columns that support the structure, and some of the caves even contain intricate carvings and decorative features that suggest a culture with both advanced architectural knowledge and a deep sense of artistry. But despite this evidence of human craftsmanship, no historical records exist to explain the origins of the caves. No known civilization is directly associated with their construction, and the caves themselves show no clear indication of being tied to any specific period in Chinese history. The absence of inscriptions, artifacts, or even any signs of regular human habitation in or around the caves has left archaeologists scratching their heads. How could such a massive and elaborate system of tunnels be built without leaving behind any trace of the people who created it? The mystery only deepens when you examine the method of construction. The Longyou Caves were carved out of solid rock, using tools that would have been available in ancient China. Yet the precision of the work suggests a level of skill and knowledge that seems out of place for the time period. The tunnels are carved to near perfection, with wide, evenly spaced corridors and expansive chambers that seem to defy the limitations of their supposed era. Some researchers believe that the caves were dug using wooden tools and primitive techniques, but the sheer scale of the project raises questions about how this was even possible. Many theories have emerged over the years to explain the origins and purpose of the Longyou Caves, but none have managed to settle the mystery for good. The most widely accepted explanation is that the caves were used as a massive water reservoir, perhaps constructed during the early dynasties of China to store water for irrigation or other agricultural purposes. However, this theory is far from conclusive. While the caves do contain traces of water, there is no clear evidence that they were ever used as a functioning reservoir. Furthermore, The sheer amount of labor and skill required to build such a vast network of tunnels seems excessive for such a practical purpose. Another theory suggests that the caves were once used for religious or ceremonial purposes. Some speculate that they were places of worship or sacred sites, constructed to honor gods or ancestors. The smooth walls and intricate carvings in some of the chambers might support this idea, as religious sites in ancient China often featured such artistic elements. However, no definitive evidence has been found to support this hypothesis. There are no inscriptions or depictions of gods or rituals, and no evidence of any organized religious activity within the caves. As you explore the Longyou caves, it becomes increasingly apparent that the most striking feature is not their size, their symmetry, or even the mystery of their construction, but the lack of any clear connection to known civilizations. Despite the centuries of recorded history in China, no one has been able to definitively identify the culture or civilization responsible for the caves. It is as though the Longyou caves stand as a silent monument to an unknown people, a civilization that has left no trace of its existence, no written records, no artifacts, and no names. Some have even ventured into more speculative territory, suggesting that the caves might be the work of a lost or forgotten civilization, one that existed long before the rise of recorded history in China. Could the Longyou caves be the remains of a culture that predated the ancient Chinese dynasties? Some have suggested that they might be the work of an ancient, highly advanced civilization that existed during the prehistoric period, perhaps even before the dawn of written language. Could the caves be the remnants of a culture that was so advanced that its knowledge and achievements were lost to time? Could this long-lost civilization have known something that we have since forgotten, or that modern archaeologists have yet to discover? Another, even more fringe theory connects the Longyou caves to ancient extraterrestrial activity. Could the caves be the work of beings from another world? While this theory may sound far-fetched to some, it is not without its proponents. After all, the precision with which the tunnels are carved and the sheer scale of the project might suggest that some kind of supernatural force or advanced technology was involved in their construction. While there is no physical evidence to support this theory, it has captured the imagination of some who are drawn to the possibility of ancient extraterrestrial contact. But for now, the mystery of the Longyou caves remains unsolved. Despite numerous investigations and theories, no definitive answer has emerged. Was it a water reservoir, a religious site, or something else entirely? And who were the people who built it, and why did they leave no trace of their existence? These questions linger, unanswered, like a riddle embedded deep in the earth. As we reflect on the Longyou caves, we are left to wonder whether the truth of their origin will ever be known. Could there be more undiscovered chambers beneath the earth, hidden away for centuries, waiting for someone to uncover their secrets? Or will the mystery remain, like so many others, locked in the silent rock, buried beneath the passage of time? As we continue our search for answers, the Longyou caves stand as a reminder of how much of our history still eludes us, waiting to be unearthed, but perhaps never fully understood. As we leave behind the cryptic labyrinth of the Longyou caves and move westward into the arid expanse of New Mexico, we encounter yet another peculiar and haunting mystery, one that defies explanation and challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. This is the story of the San Pedro mountain mummy, often referred to as Pedro, a discovery that raises unsettling questions about ancient civilizations, forgotten peoples, and even the possibility of unknown encounters from the distant past. In the harsh, sun-scorched landscape of New Mexico, just outside the small town of Truth or Consequences, a mountain range stretches across the desert floor. It was in these remote, rugged hills, known as San Pedro Mountain, that an extraordinary discovery was made in 1932. Deep within a cave, the skeletal remains of a human body were uncovered, lying in a seated position, almost as though it had been carefully placed there centuries ago. What made this find so extraordinary wasn't just the remains themselves, but the fact that they appeared to belong to a person who was far older than anyone expected, much older than the history of Native American peoples in the region. The body, which became known as the Pedro mummy, was discovered by a group of local miners who had been exploring the caves. Upon first inspection, it was clear that the remains had been preserved in an unusual way. The mummified body was remarkably well preserved, with most of the skin, hair, and soft tissues intact, a rare and striking sight given the extreme conditions of the New Mexico desert. But it was the age of the mummy that truly baffled archaeologists and historians alike. Early estimates suggested that the individual might have lived as far back as 1,000 to 2,000 years ago, an astounding timeline that placed them well before the known Native American cultures of the region. The mystery deepened when scientists began to study the mummy more closely. The body, which was found clothed in what appeared to be primitive, woven garments, displayed some strikingly unusual characteristics. The individual, presumed to be a man, was notably shorter than the average person of that time, standing only about 4 feet 6 inches tall. His features were also unlike those of any known indigenous people of the region. The skull shape was unusual, with a slightly elongated cranium that suggested some form of cranial modification. Additionally, the teeth were filed in a manner that was inconsistent with the practices of local tribes. What made the discovery even more perplexing was the fact that there were no immediate explanations for how the mummy had come to rest in this particular location. The cave, deep in the mountains, was isolated, difficult to reach, and provided little indication of any previous human occupation. No artifacts or tools were found with the body, nothing that could suggest a clear connection to any known culture, past or present. It was as though the mummy had simply been placed there, untouched, forgotten, until it was stumbled upon decades later. Over the years, the San Pedro mountain mummy has continued to raise more questions than answers. Some researchers have suggested that the mummy belonged to a group of people who had once lived in the area, long before the well-documented Native American tribes such as the Apache and Navajo settled in the region. These people, some theorize, could have been a lost civilization, one whose existence was wiped from history, their knowledge and culture erased by time and the harsh desert. Could the San Pedro mummy be the last remnant of this forgotten people, left to be discovered by accident centuries after their disappearance? Another theory suggests that the mummy was somehow tied to the broader history of human migration. Some speculate that the body might represent an early traveler from distant lands, perhaps even from other parts of the world entirely. The theories are as diverse as they are speculative. Could the individual have come from another continent, making their way to the American continent long before the well-documented voyages of European explorers? Some even suggest that the mummy could be evidence of a more ancient, unknown human migration route that linked the Americas with other parts of the world. Could it be the remains of an early seafaring civilization, or perhaps a wandering group of nomads from far-off lands? The physical features of the mummy continue to fuel these various hypotheses. The unusual cranial shape has been particularly contentious. While cranial modification was practiced in some cultures, such as the ancient Egyptians or certain tribes in the Americas, it was not common in the region where the Pedro mummy was discovered. This anomaly has led some researchers to propose that the mummy could have had origins far outside the typical populations known to have lived in the Americas during this time. Was this individual part of a group with different cultural practices? Or could they have been part of a different race entirely, whose existence had never been recorded in the history of the Americas? As with so many of the world's most perplexing mysteries, there are those who lean toward more fringe explanations. Some suggest that the Pedro mummy could represent a lost civilization, an advanced people who predated the Native American tribes, perhaps even preceding the rise of other ancient civilizations in the Old World. Could this be evidence of a forgotten society that left no trace? What if the Pedro mummy is proof of a civilization so ancient, so advanced, that all physical evidence of their existence has vanished, leaving only the remains of a single individual to tantalize our imagination? Then there is the even more speculative theory, one that ties the Pedro mummy to potential extraterrestrial origins. Some proponents of this theory suggest that the elongated skull, along with the mummy's odd features, might indicate an origin outside of Earth. Could this be evidence of an ancient alien encounter with the body of a being that arrived from the stars, lost to time and buried in the Earth, only to be discovered centuries later? Though this theory is far outside the realm of conventional archaeology, it has not stopped some from considering the possibility. Despite the numerous theories and investigations, no definitive answer has been found to explain the mystery of the Pedro mummy. The mummy remains in the possession of a private collector, and access to it for further scientific study has been limited, making it difficult to draw any firm conclusions. The lack of contextual artifacts, the isolated location, and the unusual physical traits of the mummy all contribute to the intrigue surrounding the case. The San Pedro mountain mummy continues to be a subject of debate, its true origins and significance still unknown. Was it part of a lost civilization, a forgotten people whose existence remains buried in the sands of time? Was it a traveler from far-off lands, or perhaps even an early witness to the Americas' uncharted history? Or does the mummy represent something even more mysterious, something beyond our current understanding of human history? As the mystery persists, we are left with the lingering question: what remains hidden beneath the surface of the Earth, waiting to be uncovered? The Pedro mummy stands as a haunting reminder that, for all we know, there are still countless secrets buried in the Earth, waiting to be uncovered, and perhaps never fully understood. As we leave behind the enigma of the Pedro mummy, we now turn to a mystery that has long captured the imaginations of treasure hunters, historians, and cryptographers alike. A tale of hidden riches, secret codes, and a treasure that still eludes discovery. This is the story of the Beale treasure, one of the most enduring and perplexing treasure mysteries in American history. The Beale treasure is said to be the wealth of an 18th century man named Thomas J. Beale, a gold prospector who, in the early 1800s, is believed to have stumbled upon a vast cache of treasure in the Virginia mountains. According to the tale, Beale and his companions, 3 other men, found a large deposit of gold, silver, and jewels while prospecting in the rugged wilderness near the Blue Ridge Mountains. Recognizing the immense value of their discovery, Beale allegedly decided to hide the treasure in a secret location and left behind a set of coded messages that would reveal its whereabouts. The legend of the Beale treasure is closely tied to a set of mysterious documents known as the Beale Papers. These 3 cryptic texts, believed to have been written by Beale himself, describe the treasure, its location, and its value in intricate codes. The first 2 of the papers are said to detail the treasure's contents, while the third, and most elusive, holds the key to its location. But for over 150 years, these codes have defied all attempts at deciphering, and the treasure has yet to be found. The story of the Beale treasure, as it is commonly told, begins in 1820, when Thomas Beale allegedly buried his treasure somewhere in the hills of Virginia. According to one version of the story, Beale left for a time to return to the area where he had hidden the treasure, but upon his return, he found that one of his companions had died, and the other 2 were nowhere to be found. Fearing that the treasure would never be safe again, Beale is said to have created the Beale Papers, a series of encoded messages that would, in theory, allow someone, perhaps a future descendant or a trusted friend, to locate the treasure, should the need arise. The 3 papers, which were allegedly found in a locked box in 1885 by a man named James B. Ward, contain complex ciphers, each one a puzzle that seems to guard the treasure's secret. The first paper supposedly lists the treasure's contents: gold, silver, and jewels worth an astounding fortune. The second paper describes the number of crates and their locations, giving further clues about the treasure's organization and composition. But it is the third paper, the one that contains the most cryptic and perplexing code, that has stymied cryptographers, mathematicians, and treasure hunters alike for over a century. What makes the Beale papers so baffling is the structure of the ciphers. The codes contained within the documents are not immediately recognizable as any known cipher of the time, and attempts to break them have yielded little in terms of concrete results. The most famous of these ciphers, the one found in the third paper, is thought to be a simple substitution cipher. But the numbers and symbols used in the text do not align with any traditional encoding methods. Some have suggested that the key to unlocking the cipher might lie in a reference to the Declaration of Independence, as the numbers in the cipher seem to correspond to words in the text. However, attempts to apply this theory have only led to more confusion and frustration. Others have proposed that the cipher might involve some other, more obscure reference, an ancient code, or perhaps a language that has long been lost to time. Despite decades of effort, no one has been able to successfully decode the message. Some cryptographers believe that the cipher might be unsolvable, either because it was intentionally designed to be impenetrable or because it contains a flaw that has been overlooked for centuries. Others suggest that the treasure itself may never have existed, and that the Beale papers are nothing more than an elaborate hoax designed to tantalize and mislead those who came after. Yet the possibility that the Beale treasure is real continues to haunt those who seek it. In the early 1900s, a handful of treasure hunters set out to decipher the Beale papers and locate the hidden riches. Many of these adventurers, eager to claim the treasure for themselves, spent years trying to crack the codes, but none succeeded. In the 1930s, a man named Edward Preston became obsessed with the Beale treasure, and he dedicated much of his life to the search. Preston's efforts were fueled by a belief that the treasure was real, and that the solution to the cipher was just within reach. But like so many before him, he too was left empty-handed, his life and resources spent in pursuit of a legend. In the decades that followed, interest in the Beale papers has waxed and waned, but the mystery remains as potent as ever. There are those who believe that the treasure is hidden somewhere in the vast wilderness of Virginia, its location waiting for the right person to unlock the secrets of the ciphers. Some even claim to have found partial solutions to the codes, though none have led to the treasure itself. The hunt for the Beale treasure has become a kind of modern-day obsession, drawing in adventurers, historians, and even the curious from across the globe, all united by a single question: what happened to the Beale treasure? For some, the mystery is not just about gold and jewels, but about the very nature of the codes themselves. How could a man in the early 19th century craft such a sophisticated cipher? And why? Was Beale simply trying to protect his treasure? Or was there something more profound at play? Perhaps a hidden message or a deeper story that has been lost to time? Could the treasure be a metaphor, a symbol of something greater, waiting for the right time to be uncovered? The mystery of the Beale treasure is one that continues to captivate, even as it resists all attempts at resolution. Could the treasure still be hidden somewhere in the hills of Virginia, waiting for someone with the right knowledge or the right luck to find it? Or is it simply a tale of forgotten treasure, a story passed down through generations, but forever out of reach? The Beale papers offer no answers, only more questions, and perhaps that is what makes them so enduring. As we reflect on the mystery of the Beale treasure, we are reminded that sometimes the search for answers can be as compelling as the answers themselves. Whether or not the treasure ever comes to light, The Beale papers will remain one of the most perplexing and tantalizing puzzles in the history of American folklore. Its codes yet unsolved, its riches still just out of reach, and its story still unfolding, one cipher at a time. As we leave behind the Beale treasure and its tantalizing promise of hidden riches, we now turn our attention to a mystery of a different kind, one that involves espionage, Cold War intrigue, and a secret message hidden in plain sight. This is the story of the hollow nickel, a case that baffled both the public and the intelligence community for years, and remains one of the most perplexing spy-related mysteries in history. The story begins in 1953, during the tense and perilous years of the Cold War, a time when espionage and covert operations were a constant feature of the global political landscape. It was then, on the streets of Brooklyn, New York, that a seemingly innocuous nickel would set off a chain of events that would plunge the United States into a web of mystery and intrigue. It all started when a young, alert postal worker named John P.L. discovered something strange while on his regular route. While sorting through a pile of discarded mail, he stumbled upon a nickel that caught his eye. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary 5-cent coin, albeit slightly worn from years of circulation, but something about it felt off. It wasn't until he gave it a closer inspection that he noticed an unusual detail. The coin had been carefully hollowed out, creating a small, almost imperceptible cavity within. Inside this hollow space, wedged carefully between the layers of the metal, was a small slip of paper, something that was not supposed to be there. The postal worker's instincts told him that this was no ordinary coin, and he promptly handed it over to the authorities. The piece of paper inside the nickel was a cryptic message, one written in a complex code. The message itself, printed in tiny, neat handwriting, appeared to be a set of numbers, with no immediately obvious meaning. But it was the presence of the coin, and the way it had been altered, that raised immediate suspicions. Who would hide a message inside a nickel, and why? What followed was an investigation that would last for several years, during which time the hollow nickel would become a central piece of an elaborate puzzle. The authorities, working in close collaboration with intelligence agencies, quickly realized that the message in the nickel was part of a much larger espionage operation. The code was not some random sequence of numbers, but rather a sophisticated cipher, one that was likely to be linked to Soviet intelligence activities in the United States. The nature of the code suggested that this was no simple crime. This was a carefully orchestrated attempt to communicate covertly, and it pointed to the possibility of a spy network operating within the country. But the real mystery lay in the origins of the hollow nickel itself. Who had left the coin, and why had it been found in Brooklyn? The police were soon able to trace the coin to a particular individual, a man by the name of George de Mohrenschildt, a Russian émigré who had been living in the United States for several years. De Mohrenschildt had connections to both the Russian and American intelligence communities, but his exact role in the affair remained unclear. He had traveled extensively, and his movements had raised the suspicions of the FBI long before the discovery of the hollow nickel. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that this case was more than just a simple spy operation. It was tied to a web of espionage that spanned continents and involved key figures in the intelligence services of both the United States and the Soviet Union. The hollow nickel was just one piece of a much larger puzzle that included complex code-breaking efforts, shadowy characters, and an intricate game of deception. In the weeks that followed, the authorities were able to decode the message hidden within the nickel. The numbers, when deciphered, revealed a set of coordinates that pointed to a location in the Soviet Union, a place known for its strategic importance during the Cold War. But the mystery didn't end there. The deciphered message also contained instructions for a secret rendezvous, a meeting between two intelligence operatives, one American and one Soviet. But who were these operatives, and what was the true purpose of their meeting? The hollow nickel case soon spiraled into a broader investigation, and the government's focus shifted to uncovering the identities of those involved in the espionage operation. Over the next few years, the FBI conducted a thorough investigation, and several suspects were arrested. But as is often the case with covert operations, many details remained obscured, and the full extent of the plot was never fully revealed. It was clear that there had been a network of spies operating on both sides of the Iron Curtain, but the individuals responsible for the hollow nickel message and the ultimate goal of the mission remained largely a mystery. In the years following the investigation, the case faded from public consciousness, and much of the information surrounding the hollow nickel was sealed or classified. However, the mystery never fully disappeared. Many questions remained. How did the nickel come to be in the hands of a seemingly random postal worker in Brooklyn? Was it a deliberate act of misdirection or an accidental discovery? And more importantly, what did the message in the nickel truly represent? Some conspiracy theorists have speculated that the hollow nickel was not simply part of a Soviet spy operation, but rather a deeper, more intricate plot involving multiple factions and hidden agendas. Could the hollow nickel have been a piece of a much larger intelligence game, one that involved other countries and possibly even non-state actors? The true meaning of the message has continued to elude even the most seasoned codebreakers, and some believe that the full story of the hollow nickel has yet to be told. Further complicating the case is the role of George de Mohrenschildt. Though his involvement in the affair was never definitively proven, some theorists have suggested that he may have been a key player in the larger web of Cold War espionage. De Mohrenschildt's name would later resurface in an entirely different context. He had ties to Lee Harvey Oswald, the man accused of assassinating President John F. Kennedy in 1963. This connection has led some to wonder whether the hollow nickel case and the broader intelligence operations surrounding it were part of a larger, more shadowy conspiracy involving the highest levels of government and espionage networks. Though the investigation into the hollow nickel ultimately went cold, the case remains a point of fascination for historians and conspiracy theorists alike. The mystery of the hollowed-out coin, with its hidden message and obscure origins, has become a symbol of the elusive nature of Cold War espionage, a reminder that in the world of spies, nothing is ever as it seems. What if the hollow nickel was just one small piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle whose pieces continue to evade discovery? The case continues to spark curiosity and speculation, with some still hoping that one day the truth will come to light. Was the hollow nickel simply a tool for secret communication, or was it a clue in a much grander scheme? And most importantly, who were the people behind this enigmatic message, and what secrets are still buried in the shadows of history? As we move forward in our exploration of history's strangest mysteries, the hollow nickel reminds us that even the most seemingly trivial objects can conceal extraordinary secrets. And just as the cryptic message inside that hollowed-out coin has yet to be fully understood, so too do the secrets of the Cold War remain largely locked away, waiting for the right set of eyes to uncover the truth hidden beneath decades of silence. As we leave behind the shadowy world of espionage and cryptic messages, we now journey to a far more tangible mystery, one that lies beneath the surface of the earth itself. Deep in the heart of Turkey, hidden within the soft volcanic rock of the Cappadocia region, lies the ancient Derinkuyu underground city, an expansive subterranean labyrinth that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries. While its origins remain shrouded in uncertainty, the very existence of this city raises compelling questions about the capabilities of ancient civilizations and the lives of the people who once called it home. The city of Derinkuyu is nothing short of extraordinary. Stretching down more than 200 feet beneath the Earth's surface, it is a vast network of tunnels, chambers, and rooms, carefully carved into the soft rock of the region. Covering an area of over 18 square miles, The underground city is believed to have been able to accommodate as many as 20,000 people with provisions for livestock, water, and even ventilation systems designed to allow the city to remain habitable for long periods. The size and complexity of the underground network are staggering, yet the manner in which it was built remains a source of intrigue. The history of Derinkuyu itself is somewhat murky. The city is thought to have been constructed sometime between the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, though some scholars suggest that it could have been established as far back as the Hittite Empire, which controlled much of Anatolia in the late Bronze Age. The city's purpose, however, remains unclear. While some believe it was created as a refuge from marauding invaders, others suggest that it may have served as a religious or ceremonial center. What is certain, though, is that the city is a remarkable feat of engineering, a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of its creators. One of the most striking features of Derinkuyu is its sheer scale. The city is composed of multiple levels, each connected by a series of narrow staircases and tunnels that wind their way deep into the earth. Some of the chambers are large enough to house entire families, complete with sleeping quarters, kitchens, and storage areas. There are even wine and oil presses, as well as stables for livestock, suggesting that the city was designed to be entirely self-sufficient. Despite its impressive size, Derinkuyu was not an isolated structure. The underground city was just one part of a much larger network of subterranean complexes that stretch across the Cappadocia region. Many of these cities, some of which are still being discovered today, are believed to have been interconnected, forming a vast underground network that could have provided refuge for entire communities during times of war or upheaval. But the question remains, who built these cities and why? The mainstream explanation is that the underground cities were constructed by the Phrygians, an ancient people who settled in Anatolia around the 8th century BCE. According to this theory, the cities were built as a response to external threats, such as invading armies or natural disasters. The Cappadocia region was strategically located along important trade routes, making it vulnerable to invasions, and the underground cities would have provided a safe haven for the population during times of conflict. However, this explanation does not fully account for the sophistication of the underground structures. The ventilation systems, for example, are an engineering marvel. Shaft-like tunnels were drilled through the rock to allow fresh air to circulate throughout the city, ensuring that it remained breathable even when sealed off from the outside world. The doors to the individual rooms and chambers were constructed from massive stone discs, some weighing several tons, that could be rolled into place to seal off sections of the city, protecting its inhabitants from intruders. These sophisticated features suggest a level of engineering knowledge that would have been unusual for a people of that time. Some have suggested that the builders of Derinkuyu may have had access to lost technologies or knowledge that has since been forgotten. Could it be that the creators of the underground city were part of a more advanced civilization, one whose achievements have been lost to history? This theory is supported by the fact that many of the underground cities in Cappadocia are far more complex than what might be expected from the known civilizations of the time. The precision with which the tunnels and chambers were carved into the rock, as well as the engineering required to maintain a stable environment within the city, suggests a level of expertise that was beyond the reach of most ancient peoples. Another theory posits that the underground cities were not simply constructed to protect their inhabitants from external threats, but may have served a more ceremonial or spiritual purpose. Some researchers speculate that the cities were used as places of worship or as centers for ritual practices. The complex layout of the city, with its numerous chambers and passageways, could have provided the perfect setting for rituals or ceremonies that required privacy and seclusion. The fact that some of the rooms were used for storage, while others appear to have been designed for sleeping or communal activities, suggests that the city may have had multiple functions, ranging from practical to spiritual. Yet another theory points to the possibility that the builders of Derinkuyu were not just seeking protection from invaders, but were preparing for something far more extraordinary, a cataclysmic event that would force humanity to retreat underground for survival. Some have speculated that the underground cities were constructed in anticipation of natural disasters, such as volcanic eruptions or earthquakes, or even an apocalyptic event. The scale of the city, along with its self-sufficiency, could have made it the perfect refuge in the event of a global catastrophe. As with many of history's greatest mysteries, the true origins of Derinkuyu remain elusive. The underground city's purpose, its builders, and the motivations behind its construction are still subjects of debate and speculation. Was it created by the Phrygians as a defensive measure, or was it part of a much older, forgotten civilization with advanced knowledge of engineering and survival? Could it have served a spiritual or ceremonial function, or was it a preparation for an apocalyptic event? The mystery of Derinkuyu serves as a reminder that even the most ancient of civilizations left behind secrets that remain beyond our reach. The vast, intricate network of tunnels and chambers stands as a silent testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of its creators. Yet the story of how and why it was built is one that we may never fully understand. As we reflect on the enigmatic city beneath the earth, we are left with a haunting question. What else might be hidden beneath the surface of the world, waiting to be discovered? And as new technologies and techniques allow us to explore deeper into the earth than ever before, we can only wonder how many more mysteries, like Derinkuyu, remain buried in the shadows of history, awaiting the right moment to be uncovered. As we emerge from the labyrinthine depths of the Derinkuyu underground city, our next journey takes us into a different kind of mystery, one that rests not beneath the earth, but in the hidden pages of ancient metallic books. These are the lead books of Sacromonte, an enigmatic collection of texts that have puzzled historians, archaeologists, and theologians since their discovery in the 16th century. The story of these books, shrouded in secrecy and intrigue, raises more questions than it answers, and their very existence challenges our understanding of religious history and ancient manuscripts. The lead books of Sacromonte were uncovered in the hills of Sacromonte, near the Spanish city of Granada, in the early 16th century. The books were said to have been found in a cave, buried in the earth as if deliberately hidden away for centuries. What made these books so remarkable, and indeed so controversial, was the material from which they were made: lead. Each of the books was composed of thin sheets of lead, engraved with what appeared to be ancient inscriptions. The texts were written in a strange script, one that bore no resemblance to any known language of the time, and many of the symbols seemed to have an arcane, almost mystical quality to them. As word spread of the discovery, scholars and religious authorities were quick to take an interest. The texts, it was claimed, were of immense historical and theological importance. Some believed that the lead books contained the secret history of Christianity, lost teachings and records from the early days of the faith, possibly even from the time of Christ and his apostles. The discovery seemed to hold the potential to rewrite parts of Christian history, offering new insights into the origins of the religion and its development over the centuries. But the mystery deepened as more books were discovered. The lead books of Sacromonte contained a mixture of ancient Christian symbols, scriptural references, and what appeared to be local histories of the Iberian Peninsula. These symbols and writings, however, were unlike anything found in other Christian texts from the period. Some of the lead plates depicted images of saints and martyrs, while others contained what appeared to be genealogical records, chronicles of early Christian settlements in Spain, and even references to ancient Jewish communities in the region. At first glance, it seemed as though the books were an incredible find, perhaps even an invaluable piece of history. However, as scholars and religious experts began to examine the inscriptions more closely, doubts began to surface. The texts appeared to be written in an archaic dialect, one that some researchers argued could not have been in use at the time the books were supposedly created. Furthermore, the lead itself, while ancient, showed signs of having been worked in ways that suggested more recent craftsmanship. Some believed that the books were forgeries, created to deceive or to serve a particular agenda. As the investigation into the books continued, a more troubling question emerged. Were these books truly ancient? Or had they been crafted in more recent centuries with the intention of forging a connection to a mythical past? Despite the presence of religious symbols and references to early Christian figures, the inconsistencies in the texts led many to suspect that the lead books of Sacromonte were, in fact, a deliberate attempt to create a historical narrative that suited the religious and political climate of the time. The origins of the books remain deeply unclear. Some scholars have pointed to the possibility that the books were part of a medieval or early modern forgery, perhaps created in the 16th century as part of the growing interest in religious relics and artifacts. The period in which the books were discovered, the 1500s, was one of intense religious conflict in Spain. The Reconquista was nearing its end, and the Catholic monarchs were consolidating power across the Iberian Peninsula. During this time, there was a significant push to assert the dominance of Catholicism and to reinforce the religious and political unity of Spain. In this context, it is possible that the lead books were created to support a narrative of early Christian presence in Spain, particularly in the face of the region's long history of Jewish and Muslim rule. The creation of these books could have been an attempt to provide a religious justification for the dominance of Christianity in the region. Another theory suggests that the books were created by local religious groups, perhaps with the intention of reinforcing their own specific version of Christian history. In Granada, there was a strong tradition of religious syncretism, an intertwining of Christian, Jewish, and Muslim elements. The lead books might have been the product of this complex cultural exchange, blending different religious and cultural traditions into a single narrative. In this light, the books could have been an attempt to claim a divine legitimacy for a local Christian community, positioning their history and beliefs as deeply rooted in the ancient past. Despite these theories, no one has been able to definitively prove the origin of the lead books of Sacromonte. Some have proposed that the books were created by a group of religious or political zealots, while others have speculated that they were the work of a single individual or a small group of forgers. There are also those who believe that the books are genuine, ancient relics, perhaps even the lost writings of early Christian communities in Spain that have been lost to history. The mystery is further complicated by the strange symbolism and cryptic imagery present in the books. Some of the symbols appear to be associated with early Christian art, but others are more esoteric in nature. There are images that resemble the Kabbalistic tree of life, as well as references to ancient Jewish rituals and ceremonies. This has led some researchers to speculate that the lead books might be part of a larger, forgotten tradition, perhaps one that blended elements of early Christianity with Jewish mysticism and other ancient religious practices. If this is the case, then the lead books of Sacromonte could represent a lost or hidden chapter in the development of religious thought, one that has remained obscured for centuries. Despite the many theories, the lead books of Sacromonte remain a tantalizing mystery, their true origin and purpose still uncertain. Are they ancient relics from a forgotten Christian sect? Are they the product of a deliberate forgery, designed to create a false historical narrative? Or do they hold the key to a deeper, more obscure religious tradition that has been lost to history? The unanswered questions surrounding the books invite us to wonder, what other lost histories lie hidden beneath layers of time and mystery, waiting for the right person to unearth them? As we consider the lead books, we are reminded that the boundaries between truth and fiction are often more fluid than we might imagine. History is full of strange and unexplained artifacts, some of which challenge our understanding of the past. The lead books of Sacromonte may never reveal their secrets fully, but their story remains a powerful reminder that history is not always what we think it is, and that the most curious and mysterious aspects of our past may still be hidden, waiting to be discovered. As we move from the lead books of Sacromonte, where the ancient and the unknown collide, we now find ourselves transported to a small rural village in France, Glozel, where a series of mysterious discoveries from the early 20th century ignited a firestorm of debate and controversy that has yet to be fully resolved. The Glozel artifacts remain a powerful testament to how the past can be manipulated, misunderstood, and at times obscured entirely. The mystery of Glozel, much like some of the other enigmas we've explored, leaves us questioning the very foundation of what we think we know about ancient history. In 1924, near the village of Glozel in central France, a group of farmers uncovered something truly astonishing while plowing their fields. What they unearthed were hundreds of strange and mysterious artifacts: carved stones, ceramic tablets, figurines, and bones, all covered in unfamiliar symbols and markings. These objects, many of which seem to be from a time far older than anything previously known in the region, would eventually come to be known as the Glozel artifacts. But what truly made these finds so extraordinary were the peculiarities of the objects themselves. They didn't seem to fit into any established historical or archaeological timeline. They suggested a culture and a level of sophistication that was, at the time, considered impossible for the ancient peoples of Europe. Among the most remarkable of the Glozel discoveries were a series of stone tablets, many of which were inscribed with a complex set of symbols that bore no resemblance to any known language from that period. Some of the tablets contained what appeared to be primitive forms of writing, while others seemed to represent symbolic or religious motifs, spirals, animals, and figures that hinted at rituals and beliefs unknown to historians. Additionally, a number of the artifacts depicted human and animal figures, some quite detailed, made from clay or bone, their craftsmanship hinting at a people who possessed a knowledge of artistic techniques and tools. The sheer diversity of the artifacts, ranging from ceramics to tools to mysterious inscriptions, was enough to catch the attention of scholars and archaeologists who rushed to investigate. At first, the discovery seemed to provide tantalizing new insights into prehistoric Europe. Could these objects be remnants of an unknown ancient civilization? Perhaps an early society that predates even the Celts, the Romans, or the Greeks, cultures long thought to be the earliest advanced societies in Europe. The controversy surrounding the Glozel artifacts quickly intensified. The objects were unlike anything previously found in France or even in all of Europe. They seemed to suggest a much older, more sophisticated culture, one that had been lost to time. Some archaeologists believed that the artifacts might be evidence of a previously unknown ancient civilization, one whose history had been forgotten and erased from the historical record. Yet, there was a problem. The dating of the artifacts presented a significant challenge. Radiocarbon dating of some of the organic materials found alongside the objects suggested that they might be only a few thousand years old. But the more controversial aspect of the Glozel find lay in the nature of the inscriptions themselves. The symbols on the tablets, which had initially seemed so promising, were impossible to connect with any known language. If they were indeed genuine, this would imply that the culture that created them was far more advanced than anything scholars had previously believed possible for that time period. But the skepticism didn't end there. Soon after the discovery, some historians began to question whether the artifacts were genuine at all. A number of critics argued that the Glozel artifacts might have been fabricated, perhaps even as part of a deliberate hoax. Their argument rested on several key points. For one, the local farmer who had found the artifacts, a man named Edouard Rivière, had previously been involved in other dubious archaeological claims. Furthermore, some of the symbols found on the tablets seemed suspiciously modern, raising the possibility that they could have been added much later than the supposed time of their creation. The distinctively prehistoric nature of the objects, their complex shapes, the intricate designs, The seemingly sophisticated inscriptions seemed almost too advanced for the era they were supposed to represent. Despite this criticism, other researchers remained adamant that the artifacts were genuine, insisting that the findings could be evidence of an ancient civilization whose existence had been lost to history. The artifacts were carefully examined by experts, and some believed that the strange symbols might represent a form of proto-writing, predating the known alphabets of Mesopotamia and Egypt. If true, this would push the origins of written language back even further in time, fundamentally altering the way we understand the development of human civilization in Europe. The controversy over the Glozel artifacts reached a fever pitch in the years that followed. While many scholars continued to support the authenticity of the finds, others insisted that they were nothing more than clever forgeries. Some critics pointed to inconsistencies in the material and craftsmanship, while others pointed to the context in which the objects had been found. The artifacts were discovered in a rural area that had long been a source of other questionable finds, casting doubt on their provenance. Then, in the 1930s, new evidence emerged that seemed to cast even more doubt on the authenticity of the Glozel artifacts. One of the most significant discoveries was the identification of similar artifacts found in a nearby area. These objects, once thought to be part of the same cultural group, were shown to be much younger and more modern than previously believed. This led many to argue that the Glozel artifacts were not relics of an ancient civilization at all, but rather the product of a more recent period, perhaps even a forger's hoax designed to capitalize on the excitement surrounding archaeological discoveries. The Glozel artifacts controversy remains unresolved to this day. While many still believe that the objects provide a glimpse into a long-forgotten past, others continue to argue that they are the result of intentional deception. The central question remains: were these artifacts the genuine relics of an unknown ancient culture, or were they simply the product of human imagination and clever forgery? Despite the passage of time, the mystery endures. Were the Glozel artifacts part of an ancient civilization that existed long before the Romans or Celts? Could the intricate symbols and carvings hold the key to understanding an even older history of Europe, one that has been lost to the sands of time? Or were they the result of a hoax, an attempt to create an ancient narrative out of whole cloth? As we reflect on the Glozel artifacts and the controversy that surrounds them, we are left with more questions than answers. The true origin of the objects remains a mystery, one that challenges the boundaries of history, archaeology, and human creativity. Whether they are a genuine glimpse into a forgotten past or simply the work of a talented forger, the Glozel artifacts remind us of the thin line between fact and fiction in the study of ancient history. What other secrets from the past might remain hidden, waiting for the right person to uncover them? And in a world where history is continually being rewritten, how much can we truly trust the artifacts that are presented as proof of our collective past? As we leave behind the mystery of Glozel and its ancient artifacts, we now venture into a more enigmatic and unsettling discovery, one that lies buried in the rolling hills of Herefordshire, England. This is the site of the Dorstone Hill Skull Cache, a collection of human skulls that, when uncovered, sparked a series of questions and theories about the rituals and cultures of ancient peoples. Much like other strange and unexplained archaeological discoveries, the true significance of these skulls has remained elusive, raising more questions than answers. Who were the people behind this cache? Why did they leave these remains in such a peculiar arrangement? And what, if anything, do the skulls tell us about the rituals and beliefs of ancient Britons? Dorstone Hill, located in the heart of rural England, is a picturesque landscape of sweeping fields and dense woods. The hill itself rises modestly above the surrounding valley, its gentle slopes dotted with ancient stone markers and the remnants of old burial mounds. It is a place steeped in history, as many such hills and valleys across the British Isles are, where the veil between the present and the distant past often seems unusually thin. But on this hill, more than a century ago, a discovery was made that would forever alter our understanding of early human activity in the region. In 1936, while workers were digging a trench on Dorstone Hill to install a water pipeline, they made a startling find: the fragmented remains of numerous human skulls buried beneath several feet of earth. The skulls, many of which were still remarkably well preserved, appeared to have been deliberately placed in a large cache, arranged in a manner that suggested some sort of ritual or symbolic purpose. Some of the skulls were missing their lower jaws, others had been cracked or altered, and many of the bones showed signs of wear, as though they had been handled or moved repeatedly. The workers, unsure of the significance of their discovery, contacted local archaeologists, who quickly arrived on the scene. The ensuing excavation revealed more than just a collection of skulls. Alongside the human remains, archaeologists unearthed fragments of pottery, tools, and other artifacts, suggesting that this site had been a place of some cultural or ceremonial importance. The site itself, however, provided no immediate clues as to its precise date. Some of the skulls were radiocarbon dated to around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, placing them in the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age. This timeline indicated that the cache might have been associated with the same peoples who built the great stone circles of the British Isles, including the famous site at Stonehenge. Could this site, and the skulls found there, have been part of the same ritual landscape? The arrangement of the skulls provided an even deeper mystery. Unlike most burial sites, where remains are typically placed in a manner that reflects an organized or conventional pattern, the skulls at Dorstone Hill were found in a chaotic and almost arbitrary fashion. Some were stacked, others placed in a circle, and others seemed to have been scattered across the trench. No obvious explanation for the arrangement was apparent. Were these skulls arranged for ritualistic purposes, possibly as a form of ancestor worship, or as part of a sacrificial practice? Or, as some theorists suggest, were these skulls placed as part of a cultic or symbolic act, representing a deeper, more mysterious religious belief? Adding to the intrigue is the possibility that the skulls had been deliberately altered before being deposited. Evidence of such modifications includes cut marks on the bones, which suggest that the skulls may have been intentionally shaped or altered, possibly as part of a ritualistic practice. In some cultures, the alteration of skulls was seen as a way to mark a person's importance or to symbolically transform their soul. Could the people who created the Dorstone Hill skull cache have been engaging in such a practice? The evidence, though tantalizing, is far from conclusive and remains a topic of intense debate among archaeologists and anthropologists. What is perhaps most puzzling about the Dorstone Hill skull cache is the absence of any clear explanation for its existence. No written records, oral traditions, or other forms of evidence exist that could shed light on the reasons behind the skull's placement or their significance to the people who left them behind. Unlike other prehistoric sites, such as those at Stonehenge or Avebury, the Dorstone Hill cache offers no clear connection to known rituals or ceremonies. This has led some to speculate that the site was a place of extreme secrecy, reserved for a select group who performed rites and rituals that were not meant to be understood by outsiders. The absence of any immediate historical context has only fueled further theories and speculations. Some scholars have argued that the skull cache could be connected to early forms of ancestor worship, a practice that was common in many ancient cultures. In this interpretation, the skulls would represent the remains of ancestors who had been honored or revered, and the cache may have served as a memorial or shrine. The ritualistic alteration of the skulls could suggest that the people who created the site believed in the power of the human head as a symbol of spiritual or divine potency. In some ancient cultures, skulls were believed to house the soul or spirit, and they were treated with great reverence. Was this what the people of Dorstone Hill were practicing? Was it a form of ancestor veneration that was unique to this region? Others have proposed that the skull cache could be related to more sinister practices, perhaps a form of human sacrifice. Evidence of ritualistic sacrifice is found in many ancient cultures, and it is possible that the skulls were placed at Dorstone Hill as part of a ritual meant to appease deities or spirits. This would fit within the broader context of early religious practices in Britain, where offerings and sacrifices were sometimes made in an attempt to gain favor with the gods. Could the skulls be a record of a gruesome practice carried out by a long-forgotten culture, one whose beliefs and customs were later erased from history? A more speculative theory suggests that the skull cache may be the product of a far older, forgotten tradition, one that predates the known civilizations of Europe. Some have even linked the site to the idea of lost civilizations, such as Atlantis or the fabled cultures described by Plato. While there is no evidence to support such a connection, the mystery of the skulls, coupled with the enigmatic nature of the site, has led some to entertain these more fringe theories. Could the Dorstone Hill skull cache be the remnants of a civilization whose very existence has been erased from the historical record? The truth, however, remains elusive. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the Dorstone Hill skull cache has yet to yield its secrets. The skulls themselves, though carefully studied, continue to offer only fragmented clues about the people who left them behind. The objects found alongside the skulls, including pottery and tools, have not provided enough context to definitively explain the site's purpose. And the lack of written records or other historical references leaves us with only speculation and conjecture. As we reflect on the Dorstone Hill skull cache, we are left with an unsettling sense of mystery. The skulls, arranged with care or seemingly at random, offer us a glimpse into a distant past, a past whose rituals, beliefs, and practices remain shrouded in secrecy. Who were these people, and what did these skulls mean to them? Were they part of a larger cultural system of belief, or did they represent something unique to the people of Dorstone Hill? What do they tell us about the development of religious practices and human ritual in prehistoric Britain? The skull cache at Dorstone Hill, much like other great mysteries of the past, offers no easy answers. But it stands as a reminder of how much of our history remains hidden, buried beneath the surface of the earth, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to question the known and explore the unknown. Perhaps, in time, more will be revealed about the people who left these remains behind. Or perhaps, like so many mysteries before it, the Dorstone Hill skull cache will remain forever locked in the past, its true meaning forever elusive. We leave behind the unsettling mystery of the Dorstone Hill skull cache, a haunting reminder of the secrets buried deep within the earth. And now, we turn to one of the most intriguing artifacts ever uncovered, the Copper Scroll. Unlike anything else in the ancient world, this mysterious artifact presents a treasure map that tantalizes the imagination and defies explanation. The Copper Scroll has intrigued archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters alike for decades, as it offers tantalizing clues about a hidden fortune lost to time. But the deeper one dives into the mystery of this strange map, the more questions arise. Questions that seem to only multiply as each potential answer slips further out of reach. Discovered in 1952 in a cave near the Dead Sea, the Copper Scroll is unlike any other document from the ancient world. Unlike the fragile papyrus or parchment of the time, this map is made of copper, a medium far more durable and resistant to decay. The scroll itself is composed of a series of thin copper sheets, joined together to form a document that is over 2 meters long. It is inscribed with a series of peculiar symbols and numerical codes, written in an ancient form of Hebrew, but the contents of the scroll are unlike anything scholars had encountered before. The Copper Scroll is no ordinary artifact. It contains a list of locations, many of them described with astonishing precision. coordinates that supposedly point to the hiding places of vast treasures, perhaps even wealth accumulated from ancient temples. The text on the scroll mentions precious objects, gold, silver, and sacred vessels, items said to have been hidden away during a time of upheaval, but the exact nature of the treasure remains a mystery. Some of the locations described seem to correspond to actual sites in the region around the Dead Sea, while others remain completely unknown. The scroll doesn't just list treasures, it points the way to hidden fortunes, leading some to speculate that it holds the key to one of the greatest treasure hunts in history. At the time of its discovery, the scroll was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of ancient texts that had already been generating excitement among scholars. These texts, dating back to the 2nd century BC, contain religious writings and documents associated with the Jewish sects of the time, most notably the Essenes. The copper scroll was an anomaly among the other texts. Unlike the religious scrolls that dealt with scripture, prayers, and laws, this artifact seemed to focus entirely on wealth, hidden treasures, buried for reasons unknown. The tone of the text is starkly different, more practical than spiritual, as it itemizes the hiding places of gold and silver, instructing the reader on where to find these hidden hoards. But if this was indeed a treasure map, why was it hidden in a cave with other religious texts? And who had placed it there? The treasure it describes is truly staggering. Hundreds of millions of dollars in gold, silver, and sacred artifacts, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. The scroll lists 64 different hiding places, some in caves, some in the ground, others by rivers or under buildings. The details are striking, with many of the locations described in highly specific terms, far more detailed than one would expect for a treasure map of this age. Yet, despite decades of searching, no treasure has been found. Theories abound about who may have hidden the treasure and why. Some scholars believe that the treasure described in the copper scroll could have been associated with the Temple of Jerusalem, perhaps hidden away by Jewish priests during the Roman conquest of Judea in 70 BC. At that time, the Romans had destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem, and it's conceivable that the priests, fearing for the safety of their sacred objects and wealth, hid them in various places across the region, hoping to keep them safe from looters. This theory is particularly compelling, given that the scroll makes frequent references to sacred vessels, such as the menorah, which were originally kept in the temple. If these treasures were indeed hidden away, the copper scroll could be a map to their resting places, a guide left behind by the people who took part in this desperate act of preservation. Another possibility is that the copper scroll relates to the wealth of the Jewish rebels who fought against Roman occupation in the years leading up to the destruction of the Second Temple. This theory posits that the treasure described on the scroll could be that of the Zealots, a militant faction that rebelled against Roman rule, only to be defeated at the infamous siege of Masada. The Zealots may have buried their wealth in preparation for a final stand, leaving behind the map to ensure the survival of their riches and sacred items. This would fit with the scroll's emphasis on hidden treasures and the secrecy surrounding the treasure's fate. However, there are also those who entertain more speculative theories, questioning whether the copper scroll could have origins far beyond the historical context of ancient Palestine. Some believe that the scroll is evidence of an ancient, secretive group, perhaps even one with ties to the mystical traditions of the Knights Templar or other secret societies. The idea that the scroll could be part of a much older tradition, one that stretches back to ancient Egypt or even further, is an intriguing, though highly speculative, theory. Some have even gone so far as to suggest that the treasure described in the copper scroll might not be material wealth at all, but rather something far more valuable, something tied to ancient knowledge, sacred secrets, or even lost technologies. But the most frustrating aspect of the copper scroll is that, despite all the theories, no one has ever successfully deciphered its true meaning. Scholars have long debated the significance of the numbers and locations, but the precise meaning of the text remains elusive. Some believe that the numerical codes on the scroll are a form of ancient cipher, meant to obscure the exact nature of the treasure. Others suggest that the scroll's contents could be written in a form of code that hasn't been understood yet, or perhaps that the descriptions of locations are symbolic, pointing not to physical places, but to spiritual or mystical sites of great importance. The challenge in deciphering the copper scroll is compounded by the fact that the treasure it describes has never been found. Despite years of searches by archaeologists and treasure hunters, none of the locations mentioned on the scroll have yielded any significant finds. The sites described by the scroll remain largely unexplored or unexamined, and attempts to locate the treasure using the clues in the text have proven unsuccessful. Some have even speculated that the treasure could have been discovered and removed long ago, before modern archaeologists had a chance to uncover it. The copper scroll has become a legendary artifact, inspiring treasure hunts, films, and novels, but the true nature of its contents continues to elude us. What was the treasure that it described, and who were the people that hid it? Was the copper scroll part of a larger effort to protect sacred relics, or was it simply a record of wealth accumulated over generations, hidden to preserve it from invaders? Could the treasure still be out there, waiting to be discovered? Or has it been lost forever, swallowed by the shifting sands of time? The mystery of the copper scroll endures, as do the possibilities surrounding its contents. The quest for its treasure, whether material or spiritual, remains one of the most tantalizing unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. As we reflect on the artifact itself, one can't help but wonder, is the treasure still waiting to be uncovered, hidden in plain sight, or has its secret been lost to history forever? And if it is found, what secrets will it reveal about the ancient world and our understanding of the past? Perhaps, like so many other ancient mysteries, the copper scroll holds a key that we have yet to unlock. What other treasures, hidden by time and mystery, remain buried beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? And, in a world that is constantly rediscovering its past, what secrets of antiquity still have the power to transform our understanding of history? As we shift our focus from the mysteries of hidden treasures to the ancient civilizations of South America, we find ourselves drawn into the legend of Paititi, the lost Inca city, a place that has captivated explorers, archaeologists, and historians for centuries. Described as a vast and magnificent city, rich with gold and other treasures, Paititi has become one of the most elusive and enduring mysteries in the history of exploration. Unlike the treasures sought after in places like Egypt or the Near East, Paititi's mystery is one of an entire city, an entire civilization that may have vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of its existence. The legend of Paititi traces back to the height of the Inca Empire, a civilization that once ruled over much of western South America, from modern-day Peru to parts of Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina. Known for their incredible engineering feats and intricate cultural systems, the Incas were also known for their wealth, especially their vast stores of gold, which they held sacred. As the empire began to crumble under the pressure of Spanish conquest in the 16th century, the Inca people are said to have hidden vast treasures to prevent them from falling into the hands of the invaders. According to one version of the story, when the Spanish forces led by Francisco Pizarro reached the heart of the Inca Empire, the Incas, in their desperation to preserve their heritage and riches, secreted away their treasures, golden statues, ceremonial objects, and valuable artifacts, deep in the jungles of the Amazon. They constructed a city hidden from prying eyes, a place of great beauty and wealth, where the last of the Incas could retreat to safety. The legend tells us that the city was called Paititi, a name that would become synonymous with lost treasures, a fabled city that held secrets from the ancient world. The difficulty of verifying Paititi's existence is compounded by the lack of concrete evidence. The city is not listed in any formal records or maps, and the only references to it come from stories passed down through generations. Spanish conquistadors, like the infamous Francisco de Orellana, spoke of a city hidden deep in the jungle, a city of gold, but no one was ever able to find it. The idea that such a city existed has fueled the imagination of treasure hunters, archaeologists, and explorers alike for hundreds of years. Perhaps the most intriguing element of the Paititi legend is its supposed location. While many have speculated about where Paititi could lie, the most widely accepted theory places it somewhere along the eastern slopes of the Andes, deep within the vast and unexplored reaches of the Amazon rainforest. The terrain is rugged and treacherous, with dense vegetation, fast-moving rivers, and nearly impenetrable jungle, making the search for the lost city incredibly difficult. Yet, despite the odds, sightings of the city and its treasures continue to surface. These sightings, whether they are the result of misidentified ruins, the imagination of explorers, or the remnants of ancient civilizations, have continued to spark both fascination and frustration. One of the earliest sightings of what could have been Paititi occurred in the 18th century, when Spanish explorers reported encountering mysterious ruins in the jungle, ruins that seemed to match the descriptions passed down by the Incas. These explorers, though they claimed to have seen the ruins, were unable to navigate the dense Amazonian jungle long enough to investigate further, and the sighting remained an unresolved mystery. As time went on, more adventurers sought the lost city of Paititi, but few returned with concrete evidence. In the 19th century, English explorer Percy Harrison Fawcett, famous for his ill-fated search for another lost city in the Amazon, Z, was reportedly obsessed with the idea of finding Paititi. Fawcett claimed to have seen signs of a lost civilization in the Amazon, and believed that it was connected to the Inca Empire. However, like so many before him, he was never able to confirm his theories. His disappearance in 1925, while searching for the lost city of Z, only added to the mystique surrounding Paititi and the Amazon's countless unsolved riddles. In the decades that followed, more and more expeditions were launched into the jungle, many based on conflicting reports of Paititi sightings. These explorers, driven by the allure of ancient wealth, often relied on oral traditions passed down by indigenous people, many of whom spoke of long-lost cities hidden deep in the Amazon. Some of these tales seem to align with the legend of Paititi, but no conclusive evidence was ever found. The lack of clear, verifiable sightings only deepened the mystery. Then, in the 20th century, a new form of evidence appeared in the form of satellite imagery. In the 1990s, an Argentine archaeologist, Jorge Holguin, studied satellite images of the Amazon rainforest and identified what appeared to be large geometric structures deep within the jungle. The images suggested the presence of ruins, possibly the remains of a city. Could this be the lost city of Paititi, hidden from view for centuries? Holguin's discovery reignited hopes that Paititi was not just a myth, but a real place waiting to be uncovered. However, when Holguin led an expedition to investigate the site, they found that the structures, seen from space, were simply natural features of the landscape, erosion patterns and shadow play that created the illusion of man-made shapes. Once again, the search for Paititi ended in disappointment. Despite these setbacks, sightings of Paititi continue to emerge. In recent years, adventurers and explorers have claimed to have found evidence of the city in the remote regions of Peru, near the Marañón River, and on the outskirts of the Madre de Dios rainforest. In these locations, explorers report finding strange artifacts, carved stones, remnants of ancient walls, and unexplained human remains, all suggesting that there may indeed be something ancient and hidden in these parts of the jungle. Yet, each of these claims remains unverified, and none have led to a breakthrough in confirming the existence of Paititi. The question that lingers is whether Paititi is truly a lost city or simply the product of myth passed down through the generations as part of the rich folklore of the Inca civilization. Some suggest that Paititi was not a city at all, but rather a symbolic place, an idealized vision of an Inca utopia, a dream of safety and wealth in the midst of destruction. Others posit that the story of Paititi is a metaphor for the ultimate fate of the Inca Empire. Its treasures were hidden, its people disappeared, and the very idea of the city became a legend, lost to time. And yet, the allure of Paititi persists, driven by the tantalizing notion that, hidden in the dense Amazon jungle, lies a city of unimaginable wealth, one that could transform our understanding of Inca history and civilization. Could it be that the city still awaits discovery, buried beneath layers of time, its secrets locked away in the heart of the Amazon? Or perhaps we are simply chasing shadows, an idea that was never meant to be found. For now, the legend of Paititi remains unresolved, as elusive and mysterious as the jungle itself. The city, if it exists, may never be uncovered, its treasures remaining hidden in the earth, waiting for a future generation to unlock its secrets. Yet, as with all great mysteries, the question remains, is the lost Inca city of Paititi a myth? Or is it out there, waiting for someone to uncover its ancient riches and bring its story back to life? The hunt continues, and the legend endures. From the thick jungles of the Amazon to the vast deserts of Peru, we have seen how ancient civilizations left behind mysteries that continue to elude us. As we turn our attention to the southern reaches of Peru, we find ourselves confronting one of the most mind-boggling enigmas in the world, an enigma carved into the very surface of the earth. The Nazca lines, a series of ancient geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, have baffled scholars and explorers for decades. Of these lines, one particular figure stands out, the so-called Astronaut geoglyph. A giant humanoid figure with an elaborate headdress, arms raised as if reaching out to the heavens, and what appear to be devices in its hands, this image has sparked a multitude of questions, many of which remain unanswered. The Nazca lines, located in the Nazca Desert in southern Peru, are one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. Spanning over 50 square kilometers, these immense drawings, or geoglyphs, depict a variety of shapes, ranging from simple geometric patterns to complex figures of animals, plants, and human-like forms. The lines were first brought to the world's attention in the 1920s, but their true scale and significance were not fully understood until aerial surveys revealed their full extent. Today, we know that the Nazca lines were created by the Nazca culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE, during a time when the region was home to a thriving civilization that left behind few written records. It is the mystery of how and why these lines were made that continues to fascinate researchers. Among the thousands of designs that make up the Nazca lines, there is one that stands out, attracting the most attention. This figure, often referred to as the Astronaut geoglyph, appears to depict a humanoid figure with a large circular headdress, arms outstretched, and large bulbous eyes. At first glance, the figure seems like it could be an ancient depiction of a person wearing a spacesuit, as though the figure were preparing for an interstellar journey. But as with many things related to the Nazca lines, no one can say with certainty what this image actually represents. This astronaut figure has been the subject of much speculation and intrigue, largely due to its resemblance to modern depictions of space travelers. The first and most obvious theory that has gained popular attention is the suggestion that the Nazca people somehow had contact with extraterrestrial beings. The figure's apparent resemblance to a spacesuited astronaut has led to wild theories suggesting that the Nazca culture either had advanced knowledge of space travel or that they were visited by beings from another world, an idea that, while tantalizing, remains purely speculative. However, there is another, more grounded interpretation. Scholars and archaeologists argue that the humanoid figure is likely a symbolic or ceremonial representation, rooted in the Nazca culture's religious beliefs. The Nazca people, like many ancient civilizations, used art and iconography to represent deities, ancestors, and cosmic forces. The figure could be an artistic representation of one of their gods, a shamanic figure, or even a mythological being linked to the heavens. The prominent headdress could symbolize divine status, while the raised arms might represent a ritual gesture or an invocation of the gods. Some experts have even suggested that the figure may symbolize a spiritual journey or ritual, rather than a literal astronaut or extraterrestrial visitor. But this leaves us with an important question. Why would the Nazca people go to such extraordinary lengths to create this image on such a grand scale? The Nazca lines, including the astronaut figure, were created by etching the desert floor, removing the top layer of reddish-brown stones to expose the lighter earth underneath. These geoglyphs can only truly be appreciated from the air, and their massive size suggests that they were meant to be seen from above, perhaps by the gods themselves or by shamans in a trance, who believed they could commune with higher powers. This brings us to one of the most compelling aspects of the Nazca lines, the mystery of their purpose. What function did these lines serve, and why were they made on such a massive scale? Were they markers for astronomical events, or were they designed as ritual pathways? Some researchers have proposed that the Nazca lines had an astronomical function, serving as a calendar or a tool for aligning with celestial events. Certain lines and figures appear to align with the positions of the sun, moon, and stars, leading some to believe that they were used to track the movements of celestial bodies. Indeed, there is evidence suggesting that the Nazca people had a deep understanding of astronomy. They were skilled in observing the stars and other celestial phenomena, and the geography of their desert home would have provided them with the perfect canvas to mark their observations. The astronaut figure, with its outstretched arms and seemingly cosmic significance, could be an image of a person in communion with the stars or a symbolic representation of their connection to the cosmos. But if the Nazca lines were meant to communicate with the heavens, why did the Nazca people go to such great lengths to carve them into the desert floor? What motivated them to create these massive, intricate figures, some of which are so large they can't be fully appreciated from the ground? Some have argued that the lines were part of a broader religious or ritualistic practice, perhaps designed to honor the gods or to appeal for their favor. The Nazca were a civilization deeply tied to water and agriculture, and many of their figures represent animals like monkeys, spiders, and birds, creatures linked to fertility and rain. Could the astronaut be a figure who invokes the gods for rain or agricultural abundance? Then there is another theory, one that takes a more speculative leap. Some have suggested that the Nazca lines were not just a tool for celestial alignment or religious devotion, but rather an attempt to communicate with extraterrestrial beings, as suggested by the shape of the astronaut. The theory, often popularized by proponents of ancient astronaut theory, posits that the Nazca people were in contact with beings from other worlds, and that the lines were meant to be seen from the sky by these visitors. This theory draws parallels to other ancient cultures that have myths of gods descending from the heavens, or of celestial beings interacting with human beings. The idea that ancient civilizations might have had contact with extraterrestrial beings has captured the imagination of many, but it is also heavily critiqued by mainstream scholars who point out that the absence of direct evidence and the speculative nature of such claims leave much to be desired. While the astronaut figure does resemble modern depictions of space travelers, there is no concrete evidence to suggest that the Nazca people had any knowledge of space travel or alien contact. As we continue to search for answers to the mystery of the Nazca astronaut, we are reminded of how little we truly know about ancient civilizations and their beliefs. The Nazca lines, and the astronaut geoglyph in particular, continue to inspire wonder and speculation. Was it a religious or ritualistic symbol, a depiction of the cosmos, or perhaps something far more mysterious? While many of the Nazca lines can be understood through the lens of astronomy, religion, and culture, the astronaut figure remains an enigma that challenges our conventional understanding of the past. The mystery endures, inviting us to wonder. What do we truly know about the ancient civilizations that once flourished on this planet? And might there still be more to uncover, hidden in the vast, unexplored deserts and jungles of the world? As we look up to the stars, we are left with the haunting question: was Paititi a myth? Or did the gods, or visitors from beyond the stars, once walk among us? As we continue to ponder the meaning behind the Nazca astronaut and the wider purpose of the Nazca lines, we are confronted with the inescapable realization that many of these ancient mysteries may never be fully understood. Were these geoglyphs merely artistic expressions, or did they serve a much deeper, perhaps sacred purpose? While much can be inferred from the culture's connection to the heavens and their intricate understanding of astronomy, the larger mystery remains. Why did the Nazca people go to such lengths to create these massive and seemingly otherworldly images? What, if anything, were they trying to communicate with the stars? And was the astronaut figure a direct link to that communication? This enigma becomes even more fascinating when you consider the advanced level of knowledge required to execute such precision in their design. How did a pre-industrial society manage to create such detailed patterns that can only truly be appreciated from the air? Could it be that these figures were not only meant to be seen by the gods or other spiritual beings, but also by a far distant civilization, or perhaps even by future generations who would one day find them? The apparent message embedded within the astronaut geoglyph raises more questions than answers, and each new theory only deepens the mystery of the Nazca people's intentions. In the end, perhaps the most significant aspect of the Nazca lines is not the final answer we are searching for, but the mystery itself, the enduring allure of the unknown. The fact that so many of these designs remain open to interpretation allows us to explore new ideas and theories. Whether they were tools for communication, astronomical markers, or symbols of divine connection, the Nazca lines and the astronaut figure remain a testament to the complexity and mystery of a civilization that left its mark on the world in ways that we are only just beginning to comprehend. And as we continue to look to the skies and dig into the sands of time, we may find that the answers to these ancient puzzles are still waiting to be uncovered.